Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo. I don't know who I'm with here. Sam Monson, live on YouTube.
It's you, circa 2000.
Circa 2000. My hair was not that long in 2000.
Oh, no?
By 02 maybe. Started to grow.
When did the mustache come in?
The mustache was 08.
Okay.
That was when the Giants in there.
The policy.
The facial hair.
It was
rule.
a political statement.
By 01, 02, it was goatee,
Okay.
chin.
Yeah.
But why do you have hair that replicates mine?
For charity. It's not just a voluntary looking like a tool thing. We are each raising money for Movember. I got a lot of money come in one big chunk, right? Because my thing was I was going to start off with the beard and then shave it down to a sequence of more ridiculous mustaches with every subsequent $100 that got raised. And then a $400 donation came in. I'm like, I don't know where to go with this. So I did. I shaved the mustache down a little bit further, and I figure it's our final show of November. It's only fitting to add the wig to it. I'm not 100% convinced that this wig is in the correct orientation.
That's the beauty of it.
But I feel like it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like front ways, back ways, sideways, it's all pretty much the same.
I can relate to that straight curl coming right down the middle there. Sometimes you get
this is what makes me think maybe it's
curl.
on the correct direction, is that there's a designed curl right in your eye line.
Razor Ramon style.
Yeah,
just get
exactly.
It right down. You're gonna plow through this show here with the
looking like this, yeah,
with the wig,
which will be great when we start to cut up this show for clips, and there will be no context there. It'll just be me looking like this.
If we could just get some context added for why Sam looks the way he does. Maybe I need context for how I look, apparently.
All the time.
maybe that's also true. So we got a very important show here. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and to you in particular. It's like your 8th or 9th Thanksgiving here. 8th Thanksgiving? 7th?
8, I think.
So appreciate you joining in.
It's not really a big thing for me, but now the child is basically a Yankee, so
yes.
She expects Thanksgiving the way you guys have it.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Is she excited for?
She wants it. She's
whatever
like,
you're gonna make and everything.
She was like, I was like, what are we going to make for Thanksgiving? She's like, turkey. I was like, but you don't like turkey. And she's like, yeah, but it's Thanksgiving. I'm like, yeah, I don't have a good argument against that, except turkey sucks.
Turkey. So we got to keep it tight here today. We have 16 games to preview.
Man.
16 games to preview, and we're going to start with some breaking news here. Just within the last,
really help speed along.
I know. Within the last 2 to 3 minutes, we'll touch on it quickly. Former Giants quarterback Daniel Jones has been signed by the Minnesota Vikings to their practice squad, which is a procedural thing right now.
Okay.
So the Vikings win the Daniel Jones backup QB sweepstakes. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for them it's good, right? The Vikings. Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than Nick Mullins. I think that's fairly non-controversial as a statement. Even if you've decided Daniel Jones sucks, he's probably still better than Nick Mullins. And he's more dangerous than Nick Mullins from a defensive point of view. You have to worry about more things when you go up against Daniel Jones than you do for Nick Mullins. So if Sam Darnold gets hurt down the stretch or into the playoffs and suddenly you have to turn to the backup, if you are Philadelphia, whoever in the postseason, I think you have a worse week when you have to game plan for Daniel Jones than, it's only Nick Mullins, don't worry about it. So from Minnesota's point of view, I think that makes a ton of sense. They got better. From Daniel Jones' point of view, he's already getting paid for the Giants. His alternatives are I get to latch on with a team that's going to make the playoffs and maybe go on a championship run versus I could go start for the Raiders where everyone's going to get fired at the end of the season and it only probably makes my reputation worse. It's probably good for him too.
Yeah, I think it was a solid move for both parties. For Daniel Jones, he wanted to go to a contender. For the Vikings, very good security for Sam Darnold. We'll talk more about the Vikings when we get into their game preview because we're going to go game by game. You ready to do it?
Yeah.
We're also going to hit on North Reading Linfield.
Oh.
We're going to make the picks at the end.
Okay.
At the end. So we'll make people wait for the Turkey Bowl, as always, in Massachusetts. They play on Thanksgiving. North Reading.
We got to remember
Linfield.
These bonus ones to add to our tally at the end.
We'll add them to the tally.
I'm already 2 up with the bonus ones. The Grey Cup and whatever the hell else. Oh, the Jake Paul Tyson fight.
The Jake Paul fight. Yeah, you are 2-0. And last year you correctly picked Linfield.
Correct.
To beat North
Which,
Reading.
by the way, the Jake Paul Tyson thing, Ariel Helwani, friend of the show, and combat sports supremo, assures me that it was not rigged. Like he just thinks that's that's geriatric Mike Tyson after a health scare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this was not a rigged contest.
Ariel's going to be on the show soon. Are we getting him?
Yeah, I think at some point, yeah. We've got a few big guests upcoming. But we don't have time for that crap right now. We got to get into games.
All right, biggest game of the weekend, the MVP Bowl. Philadelphia Eagles at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 3 here. Over under of 51.5 from our friends over at FanDuel. Ravens are 8-4. Eagles 9-2. Haven't lost since before their bye. And, of course, all the MVP hype, Saquon Barkley, Lamar Jackson, maybe even Derrick Henry.
Damn right.
Involved there as well. Huge game from these are the top 2 rushing attacks in the NFL by a mile. And so a lot on the line here Sunday, 4:25.
Yeah. We, of course, are making our picks using a sleeper app league that you can find the links to in our Discord, and people are playing along. I forgot to give us an update on that. Well, I'll do it quickly. Big week in the survivor pool last week. We are down to just 2 ever-presents. Somebody called Pop Tree 142 and Angel Cal are the 2 people left that have been picking every single week. Tyler's Cleveland Browns last week killed 3 people. Wow. Stone dead. There's still a couple of people that are alive, but they entered after week 1.
Never take division games.
No, it's a
Survivor.
Rookie mistake. 2 ever-presents. And as for the actual Pick'em League, where we are picking, we have a new leader there. Somebody called M. Barros 2001, which I really hope is a nod to Milan Barros back in the day, but who knows. And Alec 2 or Alec 12, whatever his name is. They're both at 105. New Sports Thoughts, who had been leading for a while, is down to 3rd at 104 wins. I somehow, after last week, remain in the top 10 with 100 even. You are down to 90 with a rough week for you. Gross. And Harry is at 84. So that's the update in all the Survivor Leagues. You can join our Discord. Links to that in the description. Either in the announcements or the welcome channel in there, you can find links to all the Survivor Leagues that we run.
Yeah, my son Harry's picks are no longer worth tailing. We'll give them to you anyway, though. We'll give them to you anwe're also going to go completely out of order. There'll be some Thanksgiving games. There'll be good Black Friday games. There'll be all sorts of stuff mixed in here.
Really piss people off.
Yep, that's fine though. We're starting with Eagles Ravens.
Yep.
And 3-point spread here in favor of the Ravens.
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting.
Again, that's at home. It's
right.
It's basically. It's close to a pick 'em with the home field advantage.
Yeah, except that's less than it used to be. So it is still people. I mean, the Ravens are still favored, regardless of neutral field, et cetera, et cetera. Which I do think is interesting because, to me, like both offenses, when they've been on form, have been basically unstoppable. But Philadelphia's defense looks a lot more potent than Baltimore's at this point. Like the Ravens' secondary in particular is still a concern or a weakness that can be attacked. I mean, we saw.
I think they've looked good the last couple of weeks, though.
They've looked better. I don't know if they've looked good. I mean, the Chargers have had a couple of weeks where they've like marched down the field and diced people up in the first half and then kind of stopped.
True.
But like early in that game, they were just carving up Baltimore like left and right. And then the Ravens did get a handle on it. Pass interference calls helped a bit. Weird ones as well. But like, to me, these are 2 very potent offenses that are extremely difficult to stop. But if you're looking at the defensive side, saying which side has a better chance of slowing down the other, I feel like Philadelphia's has a much better chance of actually handling Baltimore than the other way around.
I think the interesting side is the Eagles' offense against the Ravens' defense is that at least the Ravens' strength is stopping the run, right, is playing well up front. This doesn't feel like what the Eagles did the last couple of weeks, leaning on Washington and having that big second half, and then what they did on Sunday night against the Rams, having that huge second half, running the ball. Can you do that against this Ravens defense? So I think it's now the good part about the Eagles, we always talk about now, the dudes can take over. Like Jalen Hurts can make plays, but of course throwing the ball to A.J. Brown, who can take over a game at any point. So even though Saquon gets the MVP hype and everything here, feels like a game where it's going to be A.J. Brown making some plays here for the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly – this is an interesting test for Philadelphia, who for a couple of games have done that thing of being able to lean on opponents, and then late in the game, the run game just takes over that offensive line, like the body blows theory, right? And this is a good test for whether that's actually a thing or whether they just had a couple of games where it looked like it, which is always possible. We've talked before about how the Ravens, they have constructed that defense for years differently than other people. They have prioritized those big-bodied, run-stuffing, theoretically, defensive interior linemen so that everybody else can be like pass game focused. Everybody else can be a pass rusher or a coverage type of specialist. So this, I think, will be a pretty good test for, does that same just leaning on an opponent's run defense over and over again, can that work against a team like Baltimore, or is that specific to other sides that are not as well equipped?
One other interesting dynamic here, a couple dynamics. Eagles kind of been slow starters, right? We've been talking about their second half breakouts. They've also started slow. The Ravens, there's some of the Ravens have those games even against better teams where they just get up early.
Yeah,
and they didn't. It hasn't been that way the last couple weeks. They've been actually kind of playing like the Eagles, starting slow, and then they've been a second half team. The game flow is going to be really interesting in this game because the Ravens are capable of getting up early and making you feel, like I said on Monday night, like, how do you stop this offense? How do you stop Derrick Henry plus Lamar Jackson plus Zay Flowers plus Mark Andrews? If they can get into that groove early, Baltimore, does that take Philly out of that lean on you, run the ball type of game plan that's taken over the second half the last few weeks?
I mean, you think Baltimore are unusually vulnerable I think game flow, game situation, game script affects everybody. And obviously, like, the more disadvantageous the game script tends to be, the worse you are as an offense, right? There's very few quarterbacks that are able to consistently outperform effectively, their sort of win percentage at the time, right? You see those graphs where it's like anytime your win percentage is in single digits, like, most quarterbacks are going to play worse simply because there's no hiding it. You have to pass. Are the Ravens, like, unusually vulnerable to that versus other teams? Like, the worse the game script is, the worse they're likely to perform because suddenly a lot of what they're doing on offense doesn't really, but it kind of goes off the table. Like, you're not playing the same way with the Derrick Henry run game, with the ground game generally. You are making them much more one-dimensional, and that takes away a lot from what Baltimore wants to do on offense.
They might be a little bit, but man, this feels like a different Ravens team. They have 4 losses, and I still think they're right there amongst the best in the NFL. Lamar Jackson in the middle of an historic season, leading the league in passing yards, and of course leading QBs in rushing yards. Passer rating of 117, highest PFF grade, almost 9 yards per attempt, 27 touchdowns, 3 picks. Really a special season from Lamar Jackson, to the point where, 2 weeks ago we were kind of nitpicking how he played, not so much how he played against the Steelers, but how the Steelers were able to slow him down. That's been a rare game, a rare occurrence against Lamar.
They're just such an unusual team because when they're on, they look like the best team in the NFL. But then they're going to have a random game where it's like, okay, what happened here? And
they did it against the Steelers, and they've done it against the Chiefs. They did it in the AFC Championship against the Chiefs when they were rolling last year. Why does that happen? Are the Eagles able to do that? Because this defense in Philly has been outstanding. Jalen Carter up front. Zach Bond has been one of the best linebackers. We've talked about the rookie corners and Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, both playing great football. So I just love this matchup on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it should be a great game. I'm excited for it. I do think that both offenses are extremely potent and capable of having really good games. But I think that Philadelphia's defense has more capacity to do damage than Baltimore's does.
All right, so
that is my endorsement of the Philadelphia Eagles covering this line.
Eagles covering, huh?
Yes.
I'm going to go Baltimore, and Harry's going to take Philly. I get Baltimore in these big games, in these big non-division games. I don't necessarily trust Baltimore against the Steelers. I don't know if I trust them against Kansas City, but every other time, like, think about it, the last couple of years, every time they faced a non-division great team, Lions, Niners, Dolphins, it's the Eagles this week, Bills earlier this year, the Ravens seem to come through.
That is worth pointing out. Like, so Baltimore has 4 losses. There's obviously the opening game against Kansas City where they were a toe away from tying it up and potentially a different story. Then there's the unexplainable game against the Raiders, right?
Yeah.
The next week, like the hangover game. But then the other 2 losses have been Cleveland and Pittsburgh, division games, and one of them was Jameis's first start and, the witchcraft that comes along with that. Not to be like the cliche of throw it out, but those are the types of division games, weird things happen, right? You're right. Non-division games, you have to go all the way back to week 1 and 2, and one of those is against the Chiefs, to find the games where Baltimore didn't really show up.
So I'm going to take the Ravens. I'm going to take the Ravens to, winning by more than 3 at home. I don't love that.
Yeah.
But by the way, we're picking all games against the spread here. But I will take the Ravens Harry's going to take the Eagles. Sunday Night Football, San Francisco 49ers at the Buffalo Bills. Bills by 6.5. One big caveat for today's show. This is our preview show on a Wednesday. We usually do it on a Thursday. We normally get...
This is the least informed we will be in the entire year.
Perfect. As far as injuries go.
No.
Not general. Like football knowledge.
It's just our pure caveat.
Same level of NFL football knowledge. This is the most uninformed we're going to be as far as injuries go. So you're over here, it's Thursday, and you're traveling to Thanksgiving dinner right now, and the report comes out that Brock Purdy's not going to play on Sunday night or whatever it might be. We are uninformed about that particular.
We should just have a banner across the screen for this show. This the least informed show of the year.
Yeah, but we're doing our best. We're going to do our best here. I mean, we might do some without analysis.
I've got one for this game.
Perfect. So without Brock Purdy, the Niners, I think are going to be a different team. Look, they're talking about him coming back.
And for other teams, I might be less inclined to go without. But for the 49ers that have already shown a history this season of being like, maybe this injury is more serious than we thought it was. And the guy who you thought was going to be a week-to-week thing is in Germany getting stem cells shot into his knee or his Achilles or whatever the hell it was. I have less confidence that this Brock Purdy shoulder thing that apparently hasn't shown much on an MRI or whatever is actually going to clear up this week. Maybe it's going to linger.
As a former professional thrower, Sam.
Of course, yes.
If the throwing injury, and I know there's reports out there that the MRI suggests AC or rotator cuff strain.
Man, I can rotate that. I can relate to that.
You can relate as well as a 60-mile-an-hour thrower.
Damn right.
Which is what NFL QBs throw, about 60.
There you go.
With a football, you throw with a baseball.
I assume it's the same thing.
It is difficult to see how it's like so impossible to throw Thursday, Friday, Saturday of 1 week, and then just a week later, you're good.
Fixed.
It's usually like, the rehab usually takes a couple weeks.
This shoulder's been bothering me since about 2008.
2008 is when I was nervous going into the season. I was nervous going into the 2008 season.
Yeah.
And then my trainer, John Paloff, the great John Paloff, who trains the great Rich Hill, the oldest professional baseball player, the oldest professional sports player in America right now.
Still left. How old is he?
Still left. 43.
Wow.
Maybe 44. I think he's 43. And he came back and played for the Red Sox this year. He trained both of us. So John, works wonders. And got my shoulder back within about 3 weeks. So that's my,
well, there you go.
Like within 3 weeks, I was throwing like 82, 83. And I'm like, oh no, spring training's coming up.
Could he fix mine?
He could.
Great.
He could. Now he's going to grind it out until it's purple. And you you bruise the shoulder, grind out all the bad, and then it refixes. It's great. I'll send you to John.
Great.
Anyway, is Brock Purdy going to play? There's also potential weather here because the lake.
Buffalo.
You build a stadium on the ocean. That's what happens.
Lake is not an ocean, Steve.
Oil can Boyd said that. It's an old joke.
Gotcha.
From 86. This is good job staying on point here.
Yeah, sweet.
So Bills are hot, looking good, coming off a bye. Niners not so hot.
Well, this is where San Francisco has dug themselves this kind of hole, right? From blowing these games, particularly in the division earlier in the season. They don't have much wiggle room to lose more games, and now you got to go on the road to Buffalo where there might be snow. I do think that this is a significant, though, without type of game. With Brock Purdy, they're kind of built for that type of game. Like, it's not a team that can't run the ball, they can't win in ugly conditions. In theory, they're reasonably well equipped to do that. You take Brock Purdy out of it, it's like, that's not going to work. To spoiler alert on this, I think Buffalo easily cover this if Brock Purdy's not in the lineup. If Brock Purdy is in the lineup, I think that's a different story.
One other interesting dynamic, because we've raved about Kyle Shanahan on the show for a long time, and basically, again, this could be the first year. We'll see if Purdy misses one game. This could be the first year that Kyle Shanahan does not at least make the NFC Championship when he has his starting quarterback, right? And even one of those years, it was Brock Purdy replaced Jimmy Garoppolo. You could argue it was with his backup, who was a seventh rounder, right? It's been impressive. But with other backups, Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard, Mullins put up a lot of yards for Kyle Shanahan. They didn't win a lot of games. It's not completely the same thing as maybe Mike McDaniel and him struggling with his backups. But we've seen maybe how special Matt LaFleur was earlier this year, that he won essentially 2.5 games with
Malik Willis.
I'm like, geez. 2.5 games with his backup. Kyle doesn't necessarily, he's competitive. They can put points on the board. They can move the ball. But the offense has clearly been different when he had Jimmy Garoppolo before guys got hurt, and then now Brock Purdy before he had to go to Brandon Allen last week.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder if we've talked about it earlier. The Shanahan scheme, writ large, appears to be like less effective, or at least less unstoppable than it had been previously. Maybe the first place or the biggest impact that has is on those sort of backup caliber quarterbacks, where previously Shanahan was able to turbocharge their production, and suddenly C.J. Beathard, Nick Mullins, whoever it is, like they look like viable starters, at least for a period of time. But there's obviously a difference between them and the viable starters already who have that extra put on top of them. Maybe the place that hits hardest is suddenly those guys are not viable anymore. Like if you have to turn to Brandon Allen or Nick Mullins or C.J. Beathard or whoever it is as your backup in this scheme, they're just not going to work.
Trying to get the weather report here for you as well.
Great.
Sunday in Buffalo, winds 10 to 20 miles an hour, chance of snow 40%, snow accumulation less than 1 inch, but enough to maybe affect the game. We'll see. It's a night game, so that also could affect things. Niners run defense got gashed last week against Green Bay. Couldn't tackle. Again, I think my favorite part about Buffalo, and look, I said this last year as well, my favorite part is when the Bills take more away from Josh Allen. Let him be more of a distributor. Let him hand the ball to James Cook. Let him rely on some yak-centric type of players and plays, the Khalil Shakirs and Curtis Samuels of the world. And I think they've done a great job of that, while also having the trump card of having Josh Allen on 3rd and short, on 4th down, like he did against the Chiefs. It is a great combo. This feels like a game where I think the Bills will have success with their run game, creating after the catch, and then again, break in case of emergency, Josh Allen plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think Buffalo, from their perspective, pretty much everything is working quite well at the moment. I don't want to make it all about injuries, but San Francisco really, they've been managing to not just have unfortunate injuries, but all of their key players. Like they've actually, if you were going through the roster and earmarking who are the most important players we can take away, it would be all the players that have been injured. It would be Christian McCaffrey. Trent Williams missed last week at left tackle. He's the best offensive tackle in the NFL, probably still. He wasn't playing. Nick Bosa, we talked about the damage that him being down has on that defense, the pass rush. Both those guys are still question marks heading into this game. Brock Purdy, the quarterback, obviously. Ayuk is down for the year. He's gone. It's really difficult to stay a high-end team against another high-end team if a lot of your most important players are, at the very minimum, diminished versions of themselves.
Yeah, we got some injuries over there. If you're willing to do a without pick, you're allowed to in this one, with or without. I'm assuming Purdy's going to play.
I mean, I'm definitely taking Buffalo if Brandon Allen is playing. I might still take them even with Purdy because of the other players that are also injury concerns. I'm going to need – this is one of those ones that's like – I'm going to need the inactives list before I'm really set on this.
I agree. I mean, right now I'm going to take Buffalo to cover the 6.5 here.
Like if you tell me
weather game, home game, them in this.
If you tell me all of Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, and Brock Purdy are playing in this game, I might be willing to go San Francisco covering that line. Absent that, I think Buffalo wins and covers.
I can't believe I'm going to be out on San Francisco. I've been defending San Francisco all year, and it's just they're running out of time.
They are, but you did make the point on the review show, which is fair, that even if they blow this game, even if they lose this game, because they still have so many division games left, even though they're 1-3 in the division, and the fact that nobody else is they're a game back, right? Even 2 games back if you factor in the tie break at the moment. They can get back into this quite quickly. Like they're further away from the 7 seed than they are from winning their own damn division. I mean, that's the way back into this.
It very easily could be a 9-win division champion, 9-8 division champion.
I mean, that was other divisions looked like that was going to be the case. 9 wins might take this. The NFC West all of a sudden is becoming one of the more winnable divisions simply because they're all around 500.
We also have, I'm not going to go through all of them. We have a playoff clinching scenario.
3 of them. In this game. 3 of them in this week, I think.
This week there are scenarios, but Buffalo can clinch the AFC East with a win and a Miami loss. Of course, they'll know if Miami had lost on Thanksgiving night, so we could be looking at Buffalo clinching the AFC East. I was going to say in November. It's on December 1st, but close enough.
Yeah, Miami winning a couple of games ruined all the stupidly early Buffalo clinching scenarios.
All right. You're going to take Buffalo?
I'm taking Buffalo. I reserve the right to switch that back if all of the San Francisco injured players are playing.
Fair. All allowed. You can change it in the sleeper app all the way up till game time.
Certainly will be.
I'll take Buffalo. Harry will also take Buffalo to cover the 6.5.
Of course, I won't remember to do that, so I probably won't be changing, but,
Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. It's Sunday, 1 o'clock. Vikings favored by 3.5. They're 9-2, and with a fresh backup quarterback in Daniel Jones. Cardinals coming off last week's loss. They are 6-5.
I think this is a really fascinating game from a schematic matchup point of view. You can make an argument these are certainly two of, if not the two best coached teams in the NFL. You've got what Kevin O'Connell has done to Sam Darnold and then maybe is about to do to Daniel Jones in terms of what fixing those guys. You've got the Brian Flores defense, which causes problems for everybody. And then Arizona's side, you've got what they're doing on offense with Jonathan Gannon and their defense, which is consistently wildly outperforming the sum of the talent that they have on that group. So this, I think, is going to be a really interesting game. Like, can this no-name defense for Arizona slow down Sam Darnold and the Vikings offense, create potential bad plays, turnover-worthy plays for Darnold? And how does Kyler Murray do against the Brian Flores defense?
Yeah, it feels like the Cardinals are going to have to force generic football analysis. Arizona's going to have to force some turnovers, win the turnover battle.
Got to win the turnover battle.
But legitimately,
physical.
They don't every week. They don't have the dudes up front to win one-on-ones. They scheme up pressure. They did a nice job. They got the strip sack on Geno Smith last week. I'm like mixing up games here. Can they do that to Darnold? Because I was so impressed with Darnold and just this Vikings offense last week. T.J. Hawkinson with his best game so far after his return. Jordan Addison, 160-plus yards. And so that's what makes Minnesota so dangerous right now. That trio of Justin Jefferson, who teams have to account for, as you've mentioned, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, the run game with Aaron Jones. A lot of ways to win for Minnesota. We spent a lot of time either waiting for Darnold regression or talking about the Minnesota defense this year. But the more I see Darnold, again, bounce back from bad games, stay aggressive, and have answers. I think he's done a really good job of forgetting mistakes. And as a team, I've highlighted this a lot this year. Anytime teams come back on them, they have answers, right? They come back with these really good drives. I think they've done a great job playing as a leader, essentially. That's what, playing with the lead, even though they've let some teams creep back in, but they've sealed the deal a lot this year. I think they have a chance to get up on Arizona and then seal it once again. And again, not to repeat myself every week, but if Kyler Murray decides to, look like a top 3 quarterback, which he's done 4 or 5 times this year, then Cardinals have a shot. Him, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, those guys have a chance to take over a game as well.
They do, yeah. I mean, the offensive side is a different story for Arizona because they do have insane talent there. Certainly at the skill position players. All those guys are absolute monsters. They have got the weaponry to cause problems for Minnesota. And as much as the Vikings defense is dramatically improved from a personnel standpoint versus a year ago, they still have weaknesses. Like, you can still, particularly in the secondary, you can still attack the corners of that team. You can still attack this defense with superior athletes and superior playmakers and eventually win. I mean, we saw that with Detroit, right? The Vikings schematically dialed up a lot of good plays against Detroit, and it didn't matter because the Lions had the answers from a personnel standpoint that Minnesota couldn't match up with. And we've seen that the last couple of weeks as well. Eventually you're going to get Shaquille Griffin matched up with somebody one-on-one. You're going to get the diminished old man version of Stephon Gilmore matched on somebody one-on-one. You're going to be able to get those plays, and if you can make them when you get the one matchup, you can have a big high-leverage play that goes your way. But schematically, they are able to help those guys a lot. But that's the side of the ball where Arizona matches up for just man-on-man pretty well. The other side is more of a question.
The one other thing I wanted to highlight about that side of the ball, Arizona had been running the ball extremely well. We talked about that going into last week's Seattle game. But the other story we'll talk about when we talk Seahawks is Seattle's improved run defense, their new linebacker situation over the last couple weeks. So Arizona got nothing going on the ground last week, kind of killed their offense. If they become one-dimensional against Minnesota, then you're just kind of unlocking more of the blitz packages and some of the trickeration that Minnesota can do. Minnesota's number 1 in the NFL, lowest EPA per play allowed against the run. I think that's been a big part of their success, is taking out essentially, one part of offenses, making teams one-dimensional. I wonder how much Kyler scramble. I just think Kyler's got to be special in this game. Could be running, could be 4 or 5 big-time throws. If he does that, Arizona has a chance here. So makes me consider that 3.5, that they have a chance to cover that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, but countering that, or not countering that, I mean, that's definitely one of the ways that they can have success. But going into last week, the Vikings defense had the best, I think, one of the top defensive performances in the NFL in terms of EPA per play against scrambling quarterbacks. So they've been really good at, once those guys break contain, they clamp down on them, they don't let them make the plays, because they've got athletes in space. Like, it's not just a big lumbering defensive end who's suddenly out one-on-one with Kyler Murray or Caleb Williams or whoever it is in space. It's somebody like Andrew Van Ginkel, right, who's got the versatility and the athleticism to at least try and stay with those guys. Now, Caleb Williams made Van Ginkel look ridiculous on at least one play, but there was also another play where Van Ginkel did stay with him in the open and force him into a bad play. So I think the Vikings are reasonably well equipped to at least make it difficult for Kyler Murray to make those plays. And whilst when he's on his game, he looks scintillating and unstoppable, there have been games where teams get a good handle on him and he's not able to make it happen.
One last thing to highlight here, high level about the Vikings, the players that Kwesi, GM, has brought in. Talked about this on Monday, but Jonathan, the highest graded per PFF, Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, Andrew Van Ginkel, all guys that they've brought in this year.
Jordan Addison looking like a star right now.
Jordan Addison, first-round draft pick. So everybody's got misses, right? His first 2 draft picks look awful, right? Traded down. I mean, they have done literally nothing, not even with the team. But that's all part of the process. This year we got to see the process in action. When you lose a Kirk Cousins, you replace him essentially with multiple defensive players. That's pretty much the trade-off. And now Minnesota is in the position that they're in, and in a very interesting spot with Sam Darnold playing well, to where they might make a run with Sam Darnold and then just move to J.J. McCarthy, first contract quarterback. Very interesting spot for Minnesota from a team-building standpoint, and impressive that they're sitting here at 9-2.
We've talked before, a lot of being a good personnel guy in the NFL is how quickly you're willing to recognize and remedy mistakes. Like, nobody's going to bat 1,000. You're going to screw up. You're going to draft a guy and he's the wrong guy. A lot of the ability to be good is how quickly can you realize that's a screw up, fix it, or insulate yourself from it in the first place, the way the Lions do, right? Multiple picks on the same position, so that if you do screw up with the first guy, the second guy's there to be able to potentially fix that. But the Seahawks have usually been very good at this, right? Identifying where they've goofed and quickly moving on from it and going in a different direction. I think that's a big part of this.
Might be worth a whole off-season discussion. But for now, we're just going to pick this game.
Yeah.
Minnesota by 3.5. Where are you going?
I'm going to go with the Vikings.
My brain's starting to talk me into Arizona. I'll take the Vikings as well to cover the 3.5. Harry also going to take Minnesota. Los Angeles Chargers at the Atlanta Falcons. Chargers favored by 1.5 here in Atlanta. Sunday at 1 o'clock. Chargers coming off the Monday night loss. They're 7-4. Falcons coming off a bye, and they're 6-5 here.
Yeah,
leading the NFC South at the moment.
Difficult to think of two offenses more different to match up with than Baltimore's and then Atlanta's. Right. On the one hand, you've got the most dynamic ball carrier in the NFL, Lamar Jackson, who's got that freakish ability to just take over and do whatever he wants. On the other hand, you've got Kirk Cousins, who can barely move in the pocket. Even when they do move him out of there, rollouts, it's like old man Cousins with a busted Achilles. Very different scenario.
Yeah, it is. I saw Raheem Morris talking this week. I think there were questions about why don't you use more play action? And it's like, yeah, we're going to get back to a little bit more play action. Falcons have the lowest play action rate in the NFL. We know. I mean, Zach missed that day at PFF apparently.
Play action day,
but where we just said, hey, when you go to the NFL, all you do is run play. You just fake the handoff, and all things get solved in the pass game. Now, it is an interesting dynamic. I mean, the Rams are kind of low this year as well. The Shanahan schemes have been lower than usual, right? That had been one of the all the Shanahan tree derivative, advantages was run and play action, having that little extra deception. I will say the Falcons offense they're doing other things. The way they play with tempo, the way they've been playing with tempo on third and fourth down. If you look at some of those charts on fourth down aggressiveness, Atlanta's 1, 2, or 3, in a lot of those charts with Raheem Morris. I think Raheem Morris's fourth down decisions have directly led to multiple wins. So it's a really fascinating matchup where Atlanta, I thought, was going to be out in front in this NFC South race, but Bucs have this easy schedule and they're creeping back up on them.
It feels a little bit like Raheem Morris has decided if this is going to fail this time around as a head coach, it's not going to be because I wasn't aggressive enough and ballsy and gambling enough. I'm going to go out swinging if I'm going to go out at all.
Including drafting Michael Penix Jr.
He's just going to look
being a part of all that.
It didn't work out last time. This time I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And that means going for it when I want to go for it. I'm not going to be a slave to convention or to, the usual way of doing things. I'm going to go out the way I want to do this. So I'm going to be aggressive. We're going to do it. And it's like I think he's doing a good job. Zach Robinson, we might genuinely be reaching this inflection point where the Shanahan offense is just less effective than it's been in previous years, which automatically means Zach Robinson's job is a lot harder than potentially it looked on paper, because you're dealing with figuring out what the offense needs to be with a diminished version of Kirk Cousins slowly improving his way back from an injury, at the same time as inherently your sort of offensive framework is slightly less effective than it's been in previous years. And that's why I think you're seeing this weekly difference in the offense. It's developing, it's evolving. It's not the same thing it was week one. It's changing. And that, whether it's a good or a bad job, it's a thing other people don't have to deal with.
One other thing that we saw right before the bye was a little bit heavier workload for Bijan Robinson running the ball. And I do wonder, not directly, in the Denver game, the workflow wasn't really, the game flow wasn't really there for it in the Denver game, but in New Orleans, 20 carries, I do wonder how much the rest of the league, seeing Derrick Henry, seeing Saquon Barkley, I wonder how much you just keep grinding it out with Bijan Robinson if you're Zach in the Falcons. Like, just give him more of the touches. They've done a pretty good job getting the ball to him, I think. Run game, pass game. But he has, I think, the ability to have a similar impact as those guys that are in this, MVP race if he gets those, 20 to 25 carries.
Bijan Robinson currently has a higher PFF grade than MVP frontrunner Saquon Barkley. He has a slightly worse PFF grade than Derrick Henry, the best graded running back in the NFL. So I think you're right. Like, he is that caliber of player.
If there's a limitation of the running back grades, it's not properly separating the 60-yard run from the 30-yard run, and that's where Saquon's been special. So the grade's not the best way to maybe separate those two.
I think it's entirely fair, though, to say that Bijan Robinson is at that level of player.
Oh, yeah, I agree. He's a special player. And so teams make adjustments coming out of the bye. I'm interested in how much more they give Bijan the workload versus spreading it out a little bit, even though I've loved the 1-2 punch of Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and how much they start to use a little bit more play action and deception. Chargers are without J.K. Dobbins. That's the other interesting dynamic here. Falcons with this awful pass rush. Chargers want to run the ball, but Herbert's hot. But we've also seen in these, let's just chuck it around type of situations, you're running out of dependable playmakers not named Ladd McConkey for the Chargers. I would love to play that game, though. Like, if I'm playing the Falcons every week, I might just forget running and just chuck it around the yard, right? We're dropping back 40 times and we're going, but I don't know if the Chargers have the horses to do that.
Yeah. J.K. Dobbins, lucky for him in terms of that looked like it could have been nasty, like a potential season-ending injury of some description. It sounds like it's only a sprain.
We got a knee sprain, is the report.
And he'll miss some time, including this game, but at least I'm just happy that the man did not have his knee shredded again after multiple season-ending knee injuries previously. Like, he's a really good. Him and Cam Akers, I think, are amazing comeback stories from a position where you basically need to be at absolute peak ability, athleticism, the peak of your powers to be an NFL running back. To have in Cam Akers' case, consecutive Achilles injuries, and in J.K. Dobbins' case, multiple massive knee injuries. For them to come back and still be like any way effective running backs, I think is a great story. So happy for him that it wasn't a devastating knee injury, but yes, definitely a loss for them in this game because he's clearly their best running back.
Yeah, he is. I would throw the ball with Herbert, man.
You see all the comments from Herbert defending Quentin Johnson?
No.
He did that whole
as a good quarterback should.
Correct. But
I could throw the ball better.
Yeah, he literally said that.
Is that?
He literally started talking about how he could have better ball location. The one that hit him right in the hands.
The one that hit him in stride.
I could have put that 6 inches out further in front. Made an easier catch for Q. He was who was it? Remember, it was Mahomes. Remember Mahomes? Was it last year or the year before where he had just a litany of terrible receivers who were all when Sky Moore was in the midst of just disastrous receiver play, and Patrick Mahomes is out there after the game being like, yeah, I gotta have better ball location on that awful stone-handed drop that my receiver had. And you're like, dude, these guys are like, the quarterbacks are like full Stockholm syndrome on these receivers. As you say, realistically, they're like, what are they going to do? Throw them under the bus and be like, I need that guy next week. I need to try and boost his confidence back.
He made those catches. Maybe we win this game.
Right. So, yeah, he's out there being like, yeah, look, Quentin Johnson's a dynamic playmaker for us. A tough couple of losses, or a tough couple of drops, but it's on me as well. I can give him a better ball. He'll be a big player for us down the stretch, yada, yada. It wouldn't shock me if this game was a let's try and get Quentin Johnson the ball a bit more game. Let's try and get him back on the horse.
It's not even a squeaky wheel. It's just a flat tire game. Pump them back up. It's the squeaky wheel game. That's Malik Neighbors. We'll talk about that later. And part of my prize picks projection. You think this is we'll call it a flat tire game.
I mean, I think we might
He's flat.
See them,
we're going to pump them back up.
Yes, I think we might see them try and feed Quentin Johnson the ball a bit in this game.
All right. Chargers by 1.5 here. Oh, one other interesting dynamic here. Chargers on short rest coming off Monday Night Football and the Falcons coming off a bye. You don't get that combination.
Big rest discrepancy.
The big rest discrepancy.
There's a lot of those this year.
That and a cross-country trip, Sam.
Brutal.
You got West Coast to East Coast. A lot going on here.
There's a lot of those this year.
That's awful. Actually, a 10 a.m. start for the Chargers after doing
week.
On short week. That's really bad. I'm taking the Falcons.
This is the thing. When you get to the schedule release time, and it was like, and you just strength of schedule is thrown at you based off just the win-loss record from last year, right?
Not helpful.
Genuinely idiotic way of looking at things, right? There are an awful lot of interesting ways of looking at the schedule where there are wild discrepancies. Because the NFL, I think, when they're plugging in the schedule into the supercomputer and they're spitting all this stuff out, I think are leaning pretty heavily on the traditional way of measuring, strength of schedule. And they're like, see, everyone's got a reasonably equal schedule. But they're not factoring in things like distance traveled, like you're talking about, or the massive discrepancy that exists in terms of rest days. And, okay, the bye weeks are generally, the same. But I forget there was like a 21-day discrepancy or something in terms of rest between Baltimore and San Francisco this year, who are at either ends of the spectrum. Like the 49ers are at a brutal rest discrepancy relative to other teams, whereas the Ravens tend to be on the good end of this thing. And that's I forget, it was over 20. It might have been actually the other end of 20, close to a month of additional rest relative to other teams. So it is a huge thing. I mean, if you're particularly the later in the season it gets, I think the more it probably has an impact. Everyone's hurt. Everyone's battling through something. Those extra days of rest, those extra hours of rest are significant.
Honestly, that was when Kansas City hit their lull late in the season last year, which was like losing a game or two.
Yeah.
That was part of it. They were in those 4 teams, the 4 teams that they're kind of screwing around here with the Christmas game.
Yeah.
Ravens, Chiefs, Steelers, and Texans. Those 4 teams that they're going to play on really tight rest for a couple weeks late in the season.
3 games in 10 days.
Yeah. Lions are in the middle of 3 games in 12 days as well.
As a former professional athlete, you know the difference those hours can make.
I mean, I know we don't have time, but we flew from Tacoma to Nashville. I've told this before. You play that night, and then the next day they did the morning game. You didn't get to sleep in again. It was ridiculous. It was awful. Can't do that. All right, pick a game. Pick a team.
Well, you're making me rethink the whole thing now.
I'm taking the Falcons because the rest.
Yeah, I mean, I
already have the Falcons.
I'm taking the Chargers, but I now hate everything about that because they're on short rest going across the country.
Oh, Harry's taking the Falcons. He knew.
Yeah,
he's been studying the rest charts. So Harry's taking the Falcons. All right, let's go. Pittsburgh Steelers coming to town to face the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are favored by 2.5. What? They're 4-7. The Steelers are 8-3. How's this possible? First matchup in the division for these two teams.
It is kind of crazy.
Last chance for the Bengals.
It is kind of crazy that Vegas is still of the opinion that this Cincinnati thing's going to turn around at some point.
I mean, it's like the 7th straight must-win for Cincinnati, and they haven't won most of those.
Right.
But they're still very much in the mix. Here's what's happening in Cincy's world, at least. Steelers right now, they have the Simpsons game against the Cowboys on Monday night, December 9th.
Simpsons game.
They have the Titans, the Browns. These are all winnable games, of course. And then there might be this collision course game with the Broncos in Week 17, December 29th, or TBD, we'll see. Broncos-Bengals with this number 7 seed potentially on the line. But Cincinnati's got to at least win 3 out of the next 4, probably 4 out of the next 4 for that to be a meaningful game.
Yeah.
And then the Steelers again in Week 18.
I mean, I sort of feel like they're effectively dead and buried anyway. Like, since their games have become must-win games, the only game they've actually won is against the Raiders. They haven't actually won any of these must-win games, really, except going against Vegas.
And then the whole tricky part, and the reason why the Vegas thing is here, it's because the Bengals are in a special territory of getting to 4-7. Special territory.
Right. That's the thing.
This is one of the best offenses of all time on a losing team.
I think we've effectively passed the point where they're fighting for playoff lives and survival and, actually doing anything this season. We've just reached the point where the pressure's basically off and it's still a devastatingly good offense generally, and they've been quite unlucky or just unfortunate in terms of when they've had their bad plays that they haven't actually taken advantage of that incredibly good offense. But what this is saying is, independent of needing to win the game where they are, it's just a much better team than their record is.
It is. So here's the other part. Cincinnati's defense has been by far the most disappointing unit, one of the most disappointing units in the NFL, I would say, given their history. It's not a massive personnel difference from what they've had in previous years. They showed some semblance of life before the bye, that Chargers game, before they, were unable to capitalize and win. So I think in any given week, Cincinnati can play their best ball. Now, Pittsburgh does a really nice job, I think, in these division games. Even when they were the underdog against Cincinnati, when Cincinnati had a clear better team in previous years, and the Steelers would always give them a good game. So Pittsburgh, when they're not the favorite, like I saw people criticizing Mike Tomlin in not overall, but in certain games, like they're the favorite against Cleveland. They need to go and take care of business against Cleveland. They kind of play down to their competition. Pittsburgh does a pretty good job of playing up against better teams. And the Bengals, I think, are a comparable team with a completely different record. So I think we're going to see a really good competitive game, but it's not this lopsided 8-3 versus 4-7 type of team.
Yeah, what does if Pittsburgh has the capacity to basically play up or down to their opponent, what does Cincinnati being the opponent do to that?
They're not down because of their record. They're a good team. So what I think happens here is Pittsburgh's going to challenge the Cincinnati offense like other teams have not been able to do since like week 1 with New England. Pittsburgh's pass rush, their ability to win now with 4 dudes up front against Cincinnati's offensive line. And then Burrow's made so many plays under pressure, outside of structure. I don't know if, can he keep all of that going? Because I think he's going to be under a lot of heat with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, you would assume so. That Pittsburgh pass rush is extremely good. Their defense is extremely good across the board. That side of the ball is just a fascinating matchup. You've got the Bengals offense, which is incredibly good despite their record, going up against Pittsburgh's defense, which is also incredibly good, in large part because of that devastating pass rush they've got up front. This is the kind of game where TJ Watt could have a monster game if they don't do what the Browns did and dedicate an absurd amount of extra help to take him out of the game. Meanwhile, Cincinnati's defense is just not the same deal. You've got their defense is basically being propped up by Trey Hendrickson, and that alone is not enough to get them producing the way that they need to. And then on Pittsburgh's offense, you've got Like then there's fascinating team where, okay, against a dangerous defense, they can be shut down, except Russell Wilson is still capable and willing to just heave the ball deep a few times, and you only need a couple of those plays to break your way. George Pickens to make the catch at the catch point. Those are massive high leverage plays that can keep you in the game.
And those are the plays. I mean, I think Pittsburgh's offense has a chance to make some big plays down the field. DJ Turner had been playing really well for Cincinnati, arguably their best corner. The other guys have been rotating. Josh Newton's been feisty, but in and out of the lineup, and Cam Taylor-Britt been benched a couple times this year, very inconsistent. So I think they have some opportunities to make plays down the field.
He has both the interception and the catch of the year, and it's also been benched.
Yeah, multiple games.
Right.
Taylor-Britt with a 55.7 PFF grade and has a ridiculous interception against Mahomes.
Taylor-Britt and Anthony Richardson, the same guy on offense and defense.
The cornerback version of
Richardson has the greatest throw in the NFL this season and is potentially not the best quarterback on the team. And Cam Taylor-Britt has the greatest turnover in the NFL this season, has been benched from bad defense multiple times.
And honestly, I mean, I didn't think I'd be saying this a couple years ago, but like losing Jesse Bates in the secondary, even when they tried to replace him with veterans, with Geno Stone, with old man Von Bell, like they have not been able to solve the safety issue since Bates left. And that, like, a safety is usually not that impactful, but we might actually be seeing that in Cincinnati. So the whole secondary is vulnerable against a Pittsburgh team where Russ is going to take 7, 8, 9 shots down the field. He's done that a few times this year. And if he hits 4 or 5 of those, that's where Pittsburgh, makes their money.
I mean, it's almost always too simplistic to look at teams pre and post a big player changing hands. Like people are making this point now about running backs, right? The Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Josh Jacobs, like the teams that they've joined are all winning records, looking great, and the teams that they've left, right? Yeah. And the teams that they've left all stink, right?
They all had bad records when they were there.
Maybe running backs are actually the most important players in the NFL. It's like, yeah, or they went to better teams, right? So it's usually a bad way of looking at things. But if you do look at the sort of pre and post Jesse Bates departure, right? Jesse Bates on the Bengals, it's a much better defense. Jesse Bates on the Falcons is an insane playmaker who's, was always a ball hawk in the secondary, is also adding that peanut punch, forced fumble turnover ability to his game. You do think that if you put Bates back on the Bengals, it would make a significant difference. So it's terrible analysis, but it's probably, there's a degree of truth to it in this.
All right, man. Bengals by 2.5 here, Sunday, 1 o'clock. Where are you going?
Where am I going? I'm going with the Bengals for no particularly good reason.
I'm going to say Cincinnati as well, back against the wall for the 8th straight week, and they're going to come good.
Yeah.
Harry's going to take Pittsburgh. He's not by. I'm shocked by this, that Harry's taking Pittsburgh.
No hometown bias for him.
He hates the Steelers because they steal. All my kids think that they steal.
Okay.
Right? That they're robbers, basically.
Gotcha.
And he's from Cincinnati, and he's taking Pittsburgh.
All right.
How about that?
My 11-year-old daughter, who has no interest whatsoever in football, appears to have very recently become a Miami Dolphins fan because she likes dolphins.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the colors.
No. Although she does like the colors. But
because the 90s was just a beautiful time for all teal teams to become
and
popular.
So she changes her favorite color by the week, but she is recently,
she likes dolphins.
She's definitely an aqua blue type of person right now, but it's the dolphin that she's particularly attached to at the moment.
That would have been a perfect transition to the Thursday night game.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not that professional.
Nope. Browns and Broncos are next. It's Monday night. Monday night?
And nobody likes Brown.
Nobody likes Brown. Nobody likes Brown. The Browns have orange helmets. What are they doing? They're 3-8 going up against the Broncos, who are 7-5. Broncos favored by 5.5. That's right. Monday night football in Denver. Jameis Winston, Bo Nix. Fireworks, baby.
Jameis versus Bo Nix.
So Bo Nix trending in an outstanding direction. So let's bring some context around all this. He's a rookie.
We don't want context.
He's playing really, really well.
Yeah.
People have highlighted that maybe some of those games, best games over the last 5 weeks, Carolina,
he's rookie
Atlanta, the Raiders involved there. But he's really impressive against Kansas City. They should have beaten the Chiefs. 8 touchdowns, no picks over the last 3 weeks, just 1 turnover-worthy play.
That's pretty good.
Honestly, his turnover-worthy play percentage is at 1.4%.
Which is exceptional.
Which, when
you consider he had 3 of them on the opening game.
Yes. So he's had 3 turnover-worthy plays since week 1.
And 3 in week 1.
I read all the YouTube comments, and I know, and we have a very good audience, which is why I like to read our YouTube comments. Most of them are good. Sometimes, we get a slightly different audience. We expand our reach a little bit. You get some different comments. But I made a comment about Knicks the other day that somebody's like, what are you talking about? Like, he quieted down. He's playing great. I said he quieted his game, like his feet in the pocket. He quieted.
Calmed might have been a better word.
Calmed himself in the pocket. It is an impressive improvement in Bo Nix's game. Again, I feel like the PFF grades, the completion, whatever number you want to use, 3 of his first 4 games he graded in the 40s over the last few weeks, much more consistent. And you're just not seeing him completely whiff on wide open throws like he did the first few weeks of the season. He has been much more consistent.
Yeah.
In the simple stuff over the last few weeks.
I described his game. He was playing at this frenetic level earlier in the season where he was playing a lot like Justin Fields plays the game, which is like this panicked, quick, I got one read and then I'm out of here and I'm trying to make plays with my legs and scrambling. And he was so quick to bail on the play and just try and be an athlete out there and make it happen. And he has completely settled down in half a season, essentially. Like, I hate to give Walt credit in the chat because he very rarely says anything of use or consequence. But he said that Bo Nix comp right now is Rich Gannon. I think that's not bad.
Stylistic.
Friend of the show, Rich Gannon. Yeah, stylistic. But he is he's playing like Rich Gannon at this stage. He's accelerated Rich Gannon's career arc into like 2/3 of a season. But now we are seeing this, efficient, high volume passing quarterback who's also athletic to make plays, but is playing way more within structure. And he's got the perfect complement to that in a coach in Sean Payton who knows exactly how to make that type of quarterback work. The reason it wasn't working earlier on is Nix wasn't playing like that. He was playing like Justin Fields, and that's not going to work within a Sean Payton offense. Now, whether it's that classic cliche of the game slowed down for him, whatever it is, he has calmed down. He has settled down. He's much more poised. And now you're seeing what Sean Payton can bring to an offense with his play calling.
Yeah, I've mentioned that the last couple of weeks. It feels like Sean Payton, a little bit more creative, moving people around, and it's working, right? They've had a slew of receivers come in and out of there since Sean Payton took over. I mean, they really have. It's been Cortland Sutton and a whole bunch of different receivers as far as, Jerry Jeudy and Vele and Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin and all these guys that they've tried over there. And it feels like they're slotting into their roles. We've highlighted Marvin Mims being a guy that they're moving around, putting him into the backfield. They're going to hit him wide open on, busted coverage wheel routes. And look, the Browns bust coverages.
Yeah.
So now you have Sean Payton, who's in his bag over the last few weeks against Cleveland, who's going to make it tougher. I will say Cleveland down to down, I think is going to make it much more difficult than Atlanta, than Vegas, than Carolina a few weeks ago. They will. But we highlight every week there are going to be some open plays against this Cleveland secondary as well.
It's a really interesting defense at Cleveland because it's extremely good overall. Like, they have incredible playmakers. Myles Garrett is a dominant force. Denzel Ward is a high-end corner. Like, they've got some amazing players, but they're massively high leverage. Like, they're going to really pressure you. And then if you can make plays against that pressure, there are going to be plays there to be had. And we saw that even in the snow against Pittsburgh. Like, they were absolutely wrecking Pittsburgh in that game, and yet all it takes is a couple of shots to George Pickens or to Calvin Austin, and you can change the whole dynamic of that game very quickly. So it's going to be similar, right? You're going to get this sort of overall level where Bo Nix is going to have a lot of pressure in his face. He's going to have a lot of high difficulty plays, but if he can execute, there will be plays there to be made.
On the other hand, we have primetime Jameis Winston. So we've got Monday Night Football. Jameis, the Monday Night Football crew, they're going to be like, we need a pregame interview with Jameis Winston. All I want to know, Sam, if you could, maybe you might have an opinion on this.
Yeah.
Which of the 66 books of the Bible will Jameis quote on Monday Night Football?
Jameis feels like a Proverbs kind of man to me.
Proverbs, right?
Yeah.
There'd probably be some Proverbs in there.
Right.
Let's see if we can pull something in here.
live. Let's see if we could dial
He's
up the
he's just gonna look at the camera and he's gonna go, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding.
Because a dub is coming down the pipeline.
Because tonight we're eating dubs.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my pregame prediction for Jameis. We'll say I think you're right. He's gonna pull something from Proverbs in prime time for America to see. I just can't wait for the pregame speech for Jameis.
Yeah.
And then the postgame speech, who knows? He can pull from anywhere.
Right.
Depends on how the game goes.
Could go anywhere.
Where the sermon goes. But primetime Jameis, coming off of the Winter Wonderland win against the Steelers in Denver. Do we have snow? Do we have snow potentially in Denver? Can we get a weather report here in Denver? So yeah, that's gonna be fun against a really tough Denver defense, a pressure, a team that's creating pressure. We mentioned every week about all the different players that are creating pressure in a Cleveland offensive line that's battled injuries and just poor play throughout the year. So I think the volatility of Jameis Winston, I think, is on display as much in this game as anywhere else because he'll be under pressure, right? I mean, he'll be under pressure and still trying to throw the ball down the field. And honestly, like the results of those plays could end up determining this game, whether or not the pressure plays end up being turnover-worthy plays or hitting Jerry Jeudy in stride in a Jeudy revenge game here.
In a Jerry Jeudy revenge game. He's genuinely, over the last few weeks even, forget the general move, but Jerry Jeudy in the last few weeks has really kicked on and started to look more like Alabama Jerry Jeudy. The last few weeks have been the first sighting of Bryce Young, Alabama Bryce Young. Like, he looks like the guy he did at Bama. Finally, we're seeing some of those plays. Same thing for Jerry Jeudy, except it's been years since he was at Alabama. Like, you're finally seeing plays that remind you of Alabama Jerry Jeudy, catch and runs, impressive route running stuff where he's open, makes the play. I was so impressed by him against Pittsburgh because that's the type of game where if he'd come out of that with some open plays and 3 drops, you'd have been like, yeah, that makes sense. Instead, he was like, I'm going to make every one of these catches. Tough catches, high leverage situations, key first downs. He's been really impressive recently.
All right, man. 5.5 for Denver. I think we're going to see a great game on Monday Night Football. I'm looking forward to it. Who you got?
Who do I got? I got Denver.
Who did Harry take?
No snow in this game.
I'm going to take Cleveland.
The weather report.
No, man. Jameis undefeated in snow games in his career. That would have been great. I'll take Cleveland. I think Jameis is just gonna do something special in prime time. Harry's going to take Denver to cover the 5.5. I think Cleveland can at least keep it close, even within a field goal. So, Tampa Bay Bucks at the Carolina Panthers. Bucks favored by 5.5. It's Sunday, 4:05. Bucks 5-6, creeping up on the Falcons. And the Panthers 3-8 here, coming off of a tough loss. Ends up being a tough loss against the Chiefs, but in moral victory world, man, they did a great job bringing it right to the end.
Love a good moral victory.
Yeah, we've been highlighting a lot of moral victories on the show this year.
Well, it's usually it's generally quite a bastion of Irish sport. Sure, we lost again, but now we gave it a good go.
Fought tough. Is that what you guys do? Never actually win the big one?
Often, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it's changed a little bit in rugby where we became the best team in the world, but then we keep screwing it up in the World Cup, so you have to take the moral victory again every 4 years. But yeah, it's.
You were still sad. You were so sad about that last time around.
Yeah, very sad because I think we were the best team in the world at the time. We still didn't get past the quarterfinals. Anyway, moral victories for Carolina.
Another former number 1 overall pick battle. Love this. Baker Mayfield versus Bryce Young.
What a number 1 pick battle. The smallest quarterback that's ever been drafted against Baker Mayfield, the most underdog quarterback.
Baker paved the way for Bryce Young.
Even though Baker's not actually that small.
No, but Baker, he was the first 6-foot quarterback to go number 1 overall. That was a big thing at the time.
Yeah, but that's
how funny this is. And even though it didn't work in Cleveland, he was a 500 quarterback, didn't work in Cleveland, it still opened people's eyes that maybe you could take shorter guys.
But that's what I mean. That's how far we've come, right? Is that Baker Mayfield, who's 6'1" and 200 and whatever he is, right? Not actually that small a person, generally, as a quarterback. No. Now, he's small versus Josh Allen, right? But it's not like Baker Mayfield in abstract terms is an extremely small quarterback. And yet at the time, it was man, that's a really small quarterback. He's in the Drew Brees, Russell Wilson kind of world. Meanwhile, just a few years later, you've got Bryce Young, this tiny individual, a smaller or basically the same size person as me, and with kind of similar hair at times. Bryce Young, my size. And if you see me stand next to Ryan Leaf, we are different species. We're not the same. He totally different. I mean, Baker Mayfield is a giant relative to Bryce Young, is what I'm saying.
So my big question here, Sam, as you broke down their height eloquently.
Thank you.
Man, Bryce Young has been playing really well. Can he keep it up?
Somebody
Look,
posted.
I let other people, we talked about it a lot, but all the film, like the Nate Tices and Josh Norrises of the world, they're posting video after video from Sunday.
Yeah.
And
somebody was out there.
If you see them, I mean, just look at some of the throws Bryce Young was making.
They're really good. Somebody was out there saying this is not only the best game that Bryce Young has had, but it was the best quarterback game of the season by anybody. It's like, whoa. I'm with you on that's the best game we've ever seen from Bryce Young. The best game that any quarterback has had this season, that's taking it too far. That's hot taking
Lamar
it.
Jackson's had some ridiculous games.
Kyler Murray has 2 games that wiped the floor with anything that Bryce Young did in that game. I mean, come on. This is the problem with the world.
When people make a statement like that, though, again, they're not doing this from we think about this from the PFF lens. Take all the plays.
But then you can't make the statement.
But you can, because people take other context into account, right? So the context that would make that statement more true would be you're on the lowly Carolina Panthers. You've got David Moore as your top receiver. No offense to David Moore, but nobody's like, man, we got to have David Moore as wide receiver 1, and then we're going to go places. You have David Moore as your top receiver. You have the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. You have Spags on the other side, and you have specific plays where Spags wins. It's 3rd and 8. He's overload blitzing you, and you're throwing anticipation, pinpoint throws down the field. The context with which that statement can be made is involving all of that context. It's also relative to Bryce Young expectations. Because if Patrick Mahomes had the same game that Bryce Young had, you wouldn't be like, oh, that's the best game I've seen all year. You're like, oh, that's what Patrick Mahomes does.
But then it's not. That's just the second part is just bullshit.
I'm just defending where the context is versus how we would look at it. Was it the best throw for throw game of the season? Absolutely not. But it was so good relative to that context. Carolina should never be in that game against the Chiefs.
You can get it closer to being true if you start saying, if we make an adjustment here for strength of competition, if we make an adjustment on the other side for strength of competition, if we boost him in several different ways, which I think are fair, saying his supporting cast is not great, the opposing defense is really good. I think you can get it closer to being true if you do all that. It's still ridiculous. It's still just taking it to, it's still hyperbole. This is the problem with the world, is that whatever the most extreme way you can think of making a fair argument about something, someone has already taken it 3 steps further, and your what should be a weighty statement lands on deaf ears because everyone's already heard the 5 times stronger statement that's already ridiculous. That was the best game of Bryce Young's young NFL career. It was not the best game any quarterback has had this season.
And you could make a pretty easy argument that the guy on the other side, Baker Mayfield, had a better game just last week against the Giants. Barely missed any throws. Couple incredible scrambles. One for a touchdown. One on a 3rd and long to pick up a first. There's a few guys I think have had a really good feel as scramblers. It felt like Mahomes kind of set this standard for the picking your spots at the right time and always being able to get 9 when you need 8 and getting 5 when you need 4, all that fun stuff. Feel like I've highlighted Jaden Daniels this year. I've highlighted Brock Purdy. Baker's kind of in this bucket now. When he takes off, when he was weaving through the defense and picking the right angle and setting up a block down the field just to pick up a 3rd and long, and then, of course, dives into the end zone for his touchdown on a different scramble, Baker's added that element to his game where he's scrambling at the right time, and when things aren't there in the pass game, he's still creating value with his legs.
Yeah, Baker's playing really well right now. I'm curious to see how Bryce Young does in this game, simply because of the unique dynamic of that blitz-happy Tampa Bay defense. I think generally in his career so far, blitzing the crap out of Bryce Young has been a pretty good idea. I think that's changed recently because he's been playing much more impressively. Not only did Kansas City not blitz him as much as you would think they would, they only blitzed him 35% of the time. He destroyed it. That, 2 things were a factor there. Number one, they'd already sort of seen from his tape, maybe we want to dial this back a bit, but he completed 11 of 14 attempts for 140 yards and a touchdown, which is a passer rating of 132 against Kansas City's blitz. So we know that Todd Bowles is not going to change. He's not going to dial it back. He's not going to go, oh, this quarterback might be good against the blitz. Let's stop doing that. He does what they do, and he's going to do it against pretty much everybody. So Tampa Bay is probably going to come after Bryce Young with the blitz. If he has the same kind of game.
If I'm as impressed as I am with Bryce, I'm also just like, after Kyler had that incredible game, I think it was in week 2, I was like, well, it's going to be really tough for him to make 5 big-time throws like Bryce Young did last week. If you've got tight window throws against the blitz again this week, if there's a couple just misses in there, that obviously changes the whole outcome of the game.
Yeah, but I mean, only 2 of those big-time throws were against the blitz. But more importantly, like if he's just in the same zone, like if he's able to have a good performance against the blitz again, I mean, Bryce Young could have a really big game if they're going to give him those opportunities to hit.
Saw some people in the chat asking about Jonathan Brooks, backup running back for the Panthers. He did make his debut last week. I think just 1 or 2 carries. Like, it's going to be tough for him to steal carries from Chuba Hubbard, even though we both.
Right. I mean, there's no incentive right now to take workload off Chuba Hubbard.
I will say there is this. I think the Panthers have this ability from a game flow perspective to have a game where Chuba Hubbard's getting 18, 20 carries and Brooks is getting 8 or 10. Like if they don't fall behind like they did against Kansas City, they might be this team that can control the ball on the ground, put Bryce Young into favorable third down situations, and have a pretty effective offense behind that running attack. I'm interested to see if they can get that going. And this could be a game where they're trying to actually keep the ball away from a very explosive Bucs offense. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I mean, we've been sort of making adjustments all season long for how bad Carolina is, just generally. But they do have the bones of a good offense if Bryce Young is able to play well. Like, that offensive line is good. That's the one area where I think is definitively just a good unit. The offensive line is in good shape, even with, not necessarily the starting 5 that they would want in there. It's a good offensive line. If Bryce Young is able to play well, now suddenly you've got a good offensive line paving the way for a running back on a career year and a quarterback who's suddenly playing at a different level. That's where you start to make positive adjustments for maybe on paper the receiving core isn't amazing, but Xavier Legette, David Moore, Jalen Coker, Adam Thielen, it's a group that can work, if those other things are functioning.
Carolina's defense has been awful all season. They did give up a lot of points last week, but the pass rush was the best it had been all year. I'm curious to see if the DJ Wanhams and Jadeveon Clowneys of the world can get pressure again. And Tampa Bay had Mike Evans back last week. They were still scoring points without Mike Evans, but clearly he adds just another threat. And Baker playing great football. And Tampa Bay, as we've highlighted a few times on the show the last few weeks, golden opportunity here. Panthers, Raiders, one of the easiest schedules in the second half here, just a game behind Atlanta. It's really 2 games because of the tiebreaker. They have to make up some ground. But if the Bucs are going to make a run for the division and or wild card, they got to do it on this stretch here.
Sorry, just apparently while I was making the point that I have similar hair to Bryce Young, apparently our producers have already proven this. See?
That is similar.
We've even both got mustaches. It's perfect. It's a perfect likeness.
It's same size too.
It really is. Like exactly the same size, height and weight, although I'm slimming down right now, I don't think Bryce Young is shedding the pounds.
Do you look tiny behind the lectern?
Probably, yeah, if we have the suitable lectern. Also behind the offensive line, same thing.
We got to get you on those VR.
Perfect.
Get in the VR headset and just have like towering offensive linemen in front of you so you can't see the middle of the field.
I mean, like this, I am currently the best proxy for Bryce Young that exists.
You are.
Same height and weight, same hair, same mustache. Don't have the goatee. I could grow that. Give me a week. I could get that going.
Just you thought you were imitating me, and you're over here imitating
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young.
Who knew? He doesn't have the Razor Ramon rogue curl though.
Doesn't have the rogue curl. No. He's controlled that pretty well.
He's got that. Well, that would impair the vision. You got to get that out of the way.
It's all the more difficult to see over the middle linebacker.
I mean, there's a reason that Razor Ramon wasn't a high-level quarterback.
There's a reason. He had the height, too, 6'7".
6'7"?
Yeah.
Wow.
Big dude. I mean, wrestling height, who knows?
Right. Yeah.
They fake it a little bit. Mm-hmm. All right. I was taller than The Undertaker, and he's listed at 6'10". I probably got 2 inches on Big Mark Calloway.
Chat says
when
Sam's so pale. I mean, Sam's Irish. Like we exist at a level of pale that doesn't.
Irish Bryce Young.
Billy Connolly used to make this joke for Scotsmen, right? There's white people, but Scotsmen and Celtic people we're not white. We're a shade of pale blue. It takes us a week in the sun to get to white before you can then get into tan territory.
Pale blue.
So, Sam, even after, we're in November now, we're getting into winter. This is peak whiteness. But as I say, we're pale blue or pale pink, depending on time of year.
Pale pink Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
We got to make some picks. Bucks by 5.5 on the road here in Carolina.
I am going to buy into Tampa Bay simply being a better team. I think Bryce Young might still have another good game. I just don't think their defense can back up what they did a week ago. I know you said that they did give up a lot of points still, but they were impressive. They dialed up the blitz at key times. They caused problems for Kansas City.
They did a nice job in the second half.
Yeah, and it took, Mahomes being Mahomes late in the game to kind of, but their defense, I think, played better than the points they gave up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. They got gashed early too.
Yeah.
And then, had a better second half.
I just don't think they'll manage to do that again, and Tampa will probably just be too good for them.
I'll take the Panthers as the home underdogs, at least keeping it close. Harry's going to take the Bucks here. Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Texans favored by 4.5 here in Jacksonville. Texans 7-4 coming off their disappointing loss against the Titans. Jags coming off a bye. They're sitting here at 2-9. Trevor Lawrence, again, we don't have practice reports yet. Supposedly, Trevor Lawrence is going to practice and see how it feels. See how the shoulder feels. There had been rumors that he was going to shut it down, have surgery. Now the 2-9 Jags might be trotting him back out there right now here in Week 13.
Shout out to Doug Peterson, by the way, for surviving the bye week. I assumed this was just a foregone conclusion that coming off that last game, he was going to get shit canned, and that was it. All she wrote for the Doug era. But he's still there, trucking along.
I wonder if he went full Costanza, like just parked his car in the parking lot. Looked like he never left. It's like, oh, Doug's working even harder now.
But it's even reached that sort of stage where he's being adversarial and cantankerous with the media.
I like Doug. He's a friend of the show. We got to like
Doug.
Sure,
he's a nice guy. I'm just saying they've reached the point where all outward signs suggest that that's a guy who's about to be fired, and yet they haven't done that. He's still there.
Also, some teams, there's a reason why they call the day after the season Black Monday, and a lot of coaches end up getting fired because a lot of them don't happen during the season.
Maybe Shad Khan has listened to the show and agrees with our emailer from the other week who said, actually, the smart move is to not put yourself in a tough position by firing the coach, having the interim bump, and now you're in a tough spot of having to not give it to the interim guy.
Yeah.
Maybe Shad listen to that and go, I like that idea. I'm going to keep Doug to the end. He's going to play out the rest of his lame duck season, and the offseason as well will do that.
Tony would listen if he wasn't, running a whole wrestling organization. Had no time.
Being busy.
Last time around, they played in Week 4. Texans won 24-20. The biggest highlight of that game for me, the Jags fell to 0-4, and Trevor Lawrence missed those two bombs. One for Christian Kirk, where he was wide open. One to Brian Thomas Jr., a little bit tougher throw, but those two plays stood out. And the other interesting dynamic is now the Texans. I saw Lance Zierlein, who does Houston radio, NFL draft, all that coverage, talking about the Texans giving up the most passing touchdowns in the NFL, coming off a week where they gave up a couple long plays against the Titans, including a 48-yard touchdown. And it just has stuck in my mind all season. Well, first off, Lance listed all of the long touchdowns that they gave up, 60-yarder here, 70-yarder there. They had it was a 70-yard short pass that turned into a 70-yard touchdown last week. But then off the top of my head, I'm like, well, Anthony Richardson missed 2 and Trevor Lawrence missed a couple. Someone else pointed out, well, yeah, Josh Allen missed a couple in his game. Houston's defense overall starting to remind me of the Browns, where they create pressure, they create havoc, and a lot of the results are good, but man, do they give you opportunities to create some explosives.
Even just like Derek Stingley has been at the either end of those kind of plays. Like he's made a couple of spectacular interceptions on deep shots. He's been very close to making a couple of big plays on deep shots, and he's also given up some big plays. Yeah,
he's been near in and around. Sometimes, again, from our PFF background, there's coverage busts, and you're trying to figure out, is it this guy, is it that guy? Sometimes there are just guys who are in and around coverage busts a lot, even if it's not their fault.
Yeah.
There's been a bunch of those, I think, for Houston on the back end. But I've got more concerns about the Texans' offense. This should be a get-right game against the Jags defense, though. If you're going to get right,
it's got to happen here.
It should be here. We'll see. Again, teams make adjustments coming off the bye. What does Jacksonville do coming out of the bye? But Houston, the offense, when Joe Mixon hasn't had those huge games, I went from complimenting the fact that they have this Joe Mixon balance in these games where he can carry the ball 25 times. I'm changing from complimenting that to, oh man, are they just relying on that too much, those games? Because right now, passing attack is just too inconsistent for various reasons. C.J. Stroud, pass protection, various reasons, inconsistent.
Yeah, I think people are obviously the offense isn't doing what people expected it to or what it needs to for this team to be as good as they expect to be. And I don't think anyone's really sure why. Like you see a lot of people scrabbling around trying to find these data points. They're like, here's the problem. Got it. They're running the ball too much on first down. It's like, well, they're actually not. Like you look at the stats. They're not running the ball well on first down, but they're not running it particularly heavily on first down relative to other teams. And nobody's saying that about Philadelphia, who are the most run-heavy team in the NFL on first down. No one's like, they're running the ball first down too much. It's a problem because they've got Saquon Barkley. Their run game's amazing. It's working, right? Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit. These are also teams that run the ball a lot on first down. No one's like, this is the problem. Too many first down runs. The Texans are not running the ball particularly well, so the first down runs that they have that they're trying to use to, they're putting them in ugly situations. But I don't think the answer to that is to necessarily say, let's abandon the run completely on first down. First down is now a passing down for us. We're going to pass every single play because the passing game isn't working anyway. So you're not necessarily fixing it by passing on first down and getting an incompletion on that play instead. It's just the whole thing isn't working particularly well right now. And I think a large part of that is, they're down Stephon Diggs for the year. They've been down Nico Collins for a lot of it. But, pass protection has been a major problem. Like that left guard spot in particular has been a nightmare position for them. They're relying on a couple of young players now in the middle, two centers essentially playing guard and center. It's been a struggle for them.
Nice speaking. C.J. Stroud.
Yes.
I was looking at some stats about C.J. Stroud. I was just trying to compare last year and this year. Remember last year the yards per attempt leaders were all Shanahan's. 8.2 last year, down to 7.3 this year, including the playoffs last year. Mm-hmm. Big-time throw rate is similar. Turnover-worthy play rate is identical. Passer rating is down like 14 points. It's literally just like the explosives, the big plays that are down this year for Houston. Yeah. And how much of that is coinciding with the leaky offensive line? Is it just that you've mentioned the Shanahan scheme maybe not creating some of those edges in San Francisco or in Houston this year? You could argue, hey, Miami's getting back to that. They're getting back on track. We'll see what happens in the cold this week. But I'm back and forth, Sam, between this seemingly regressing C.J. Stroud doing some stuff that he wasn't always doing last year. But let's not forget, he had some bad games last year as well. He had some duds last year as well in a very impressive rookie season, like a couple games where he wasn't great. So is he regressing? Is the scheme just not creating some of those advantages as much? So I'm back and forth between not panicking, like, hey, they still haven't come close to their ceiling and they have that, versus, hey, has Stroud and just the offense as a whole just kind of come back down to earth a little bit this year?
Yeah.
And then, by the way, Nico Collins changes a lot.
It really does.
When he's out there.
So that's the thing. When you're looking at – that's a problem when you're trying to sort of look at big picture numbers and identify problems within this Houston offense. Like this is one of the reasons people, I think, are scrabbling around not finding a thing, not finding the smoking gun, is because any season level number you look at is going to be wildly skewed by the fact that Nico Collins, when he's played, has been like offensive player of the year, but has missed a huge chunk of the season, right?
True.
So you're talking about completely different dynamics, whether he's on the field and whether he's not. So any season-long number you look at for Nico Collins is like a without, dynamic of whether Nico Collins is playing or not. But, I think you can look at a lot of data points that are significantly worse than they were a year ago. The pass protection is a lot worse. But I think all of this sort of traces back to they've had some injuries. I don't think it's any one thing is what I'm saying. Like, I think they've had a lot of injuries that haven't helped. And they're probably also dealing with this rest of the league catching up to the Shanahan offense.
All right, man. We've discussed this game enough because we got a lot to get to. So where do you want to go with this one? I don't know what happens with Trevor Lawrence here.
I think either way.
By the way, really quick, Dave scored 13 points over the last 2 weeks with Mac Jones.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that didn't help. I think either way, Houston is just a much better team than Jacksonville. I think you're right to point out this is a good potential get-right spot for the Houston offense. I feel like they win.
All right, I'll take Houston. I think if Lawrence plays, I might flip to Jacksonville before Sunday in the app. As of right now, I'll take Houston. Harry will also take Houston. Seattle Seahawks at the New York Jets. Jets are favored once again because they're favored in – oh, no, sorry. Seattle's favored. read it wrong.
It's close, though.
Seattle by 1.5. The Jets were favored in almost every game. It's finally run out. Jets coming off their bye. They're 3-8. Seahawks, first place in the NFC West at 6-5 with the tiebreaker over Arizona. Over-under is just 41.5 in this game by FanDuel.
We're not banking on a immediate surge in performance from the New York Jets coming off their bye week, right?
I mean, the bye week's always interesting to me, right? There's some teams come out of it and things change and you get a lot of splits. Like since the bye, the Eagles haven't lost, and I don't know if that matters a ton. But is there anything that the Jets might change?
Well, what do you think?
Breece Hall, by the way, I guess questionable with a knee that's just come up here.
It is interesting because sometimes teams head into their bye with a very specific thing that isn't working and needs to be addressed, and they have something clear to work on over like 2 weeks. Obviously, the Jets have just been like a total disaster this season, and the whole thing is spiraling out of control. People are getting fired. They were apparently ownership was dictating that the players come in and work on the bye week, come in and practice, which is not a stand, like usually the bye week is a week off, right? They were like, no, this is such a mess. You got to come in and practice. That doesn't necessarily sit well with players that want that week off. But like, what do you think they were working on for the 2 weeks? Obviously in the background, you've got this whole, they're trying to find a new GM, a new head coach.
What are you practicing?
But like, yeah, what are they working on for these 2 weeks? Obviously, the offense needs to be better, right? But what's the brief? What are we fixing for these 2 weeks?
I mean, I think they've already...
And who's left to do it?
I think they've already dug a big enough hole that they've incorporated the Aaron Rodgers offense, which, again, sorry for repeating myself, but the Aaron Rodgers offense, which was prevalent before he met Matt LaFleur, and converted to Matt LaFleur's offense. When he converted to Matt LaFleur's offense, the success was great.
Yeah.
Before that, it was very much Aaron, and it's at the line, and it's a couple simple concepts, which to me rely on the slant is open or I'm back shouldering something. And I'm oversimplifying here too. But it is low percentage throws for not a lot of gain, right? Because if you go back, like Aaron Rodgers is still throwing the football pretty well overall. Velocity, accuracy. But like if you go back and look at a lot of his big time throws, they're like 18 yards, 20 yards, 22 yards, and they're pinpoint beautiful throws. But there's no 40-yard post. There's no there's no explosive plays. There's no play action. We're gonna post dig route. There's no Mills concept where things are wide open. Post corners where things are open and you're creating big plays. Those just aren't part of the offense. It's like, hey, Aaron, go be special. And when Garrett Wilson is special and Devontae Adams is special and Breece Hall is special, they move the ball okay. And if they're not, there's just not a whole lot of easy buttons to press in this offense. So if they decide to create some easy buttons during the bye week, that would be one thing. I don't see that happening, though.
Well, that's the thing is, so it's a fairly easy, like if you were a consultant from the outside being thrown into this and saying, okay, how do we make this better in 2 weeks? You would immediately say, well, the first thing we need to do is to add some stuff to this offense that Aaron Rodgers, that is not there right now, that Aaron Rodgers has previously done but does not appear to love doing, right? Who is there to make that happen, right? Does anybody currently remaining in that building essentially have not the authority, but the balls? Does anyone have the balls to walk into Aaron Rodgers' office somewhere in the facility?
He's got his own office?
Right.
I would. First off, Aaron would not have an office with me as GM. That we'd cancel the office. He doesn't have an office.
But does anyone have the balls to walk up to Rodgers and say, okay, you're playing reasonably well overall. I think that's, the narrative out there is wrong. You are not playing badly. You are, however, the problem, right? And in order to stop you being the problem, you need to get out of the way of the things we need to do on offense to make you and us the best version of ourselves. So all this stuff that is off the table because you don't love running it is now back on the table, and you're going to spend the next 2 weeks practicing it. Does anyone have the nuts left there to still do that?
No comment. 33rd team's leading the search here, Sam. The leading the search for the GM and potentially the coach.
You're going to find somebody with the balls.
I texted Mike T. We'll keep the responses between us.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Keep the responses between Mike and I. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens here. The Jets are also in this interesting spot. They're going to have a new GM. They're going to have a new head coach. We know all this. Aaron Rodgers gives them the best chance to win. At what point, if the reports are true that they don't want him back,
and that Woody was already trying to bench him earlier in the season.
I mean, Woody was trying to bench him reportedly for performance issues,
right?
But at what point do you just say, "Hey, we don't want to win too many games. We'd rather have a better draft pick"?
But also, if he was willing to bench him earlier in the season, and you've already fired everybody else, to
be clear, as a future GM, I am not suggesting tanking as a viable strategy in the NFL. I would never suggest such things, especially when I could be in the seat to have that power at some point. Just wanted to make that clear. But I'm saying other people could make that decision.
Yeah.
Not me.
No.
So they might be closing in on that.
I mean, yeah, I think for a guy that apparently already wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers earlier in the season when things weren't going well, now there's no incentive to win games because it's dead. The season's already done, right? So you do have to start to wonder at what point would they make a switch to Tyrod Taylor, who himself, like Tyrod Taylor, has got experience.
Or Tim Boyle. I mean, if you really want to play that game, you just find,
I don't think they're doing that.
Tim Boyle starts.
But I do think you can make an argument that Tyrod Taylor could spark an offense, right, that is not playing necessarily at the peak of its powers. Now, you've also
Aaron Rodgers offense, though.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the Aaron. That's what I'm saying. Like, you put Tyrod. One way of addressing.
They've installed Aaron Rodgers' offense. It's his
but
offense.
It doesn't need to function the same way. That's the thing. Like, how much of what the Jets are currently doing is because that's what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. It's not like they don't have this stuff in the playbook. It's just that Rodgers doesn't like it, so we're not running it. But Tyrod Taylor comes in. You're no longer running the same plays. You're no longer calling the same things. You're no longer making the same adjustments at the line of scrimmage. It's a different offense. Like, it's the same scheme. It's the same playbook, but it's a different offense.
I'll just say, too, like, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is saying, hey, maybe they want me back. Some of the reports might not be true. Wherever Aaron's playing next year, though, you need a very good offensive coordinator that he will submit under, that he will work under. I think the idea of, like, that guy runs the offense with his people, with the 2019 Green Bay Packers, like, that's not going to work.
I don't think it needs, it doesn't necessarily need to be that Rodgers is, subservient to a new offensive coordinator, but it has to be someone that's willing to challenge him. Like,
but that's what it means. Like, that's what a QB is by definition, is subservient, is submissive, is like, that's like they play under it doesn't mean they don't have say. It doesn't mean they don't have back and forth. It just means it's saying what you're saying.
It should be collaborative. I mean, Peyton Manning at one point dumped the offense that they were running because it didn't work. And he installed essentially the Peyton Manning offense, and suddenly he puts together some of the greatest quarterback seasons that have ever been seen in Denver. Like, it doesn't have to be that the quarterback is subservient to the offensive coordinator because that's the way it should work in an org chart. The problem is that the Rodgers way of that dynamic doesn't work with Rodgers because his offense, his vision is not the most efficient version of Aaron Rodgers. Peyton Manning's vision was the most efficient version of Peyton Manning, so to hell with it. Let him roll what he wants to roll with. With Rodgers, it needs to be somebody that's willing to challenge him and say, look, if I just let you run the only things you want to run, we do not get the best version of you. I need to add all this stuff in as well. I don't care if you don't like it. We need to find a way of making it work. Roethlisberger was the same, right? What Roethlisberger wanted to run was not the best version of Ben Roethlisberger. We need to come to a compromise. Manning was different. What Manning wanted to run was the best version of Peyton Manning. I'll get out of your way and just let you run the offense.
Yeah, but then even in his last year where he could barely throw the ball was the first time Peyton gave in to an offensive coordinator. It was Gary Kubiak. He ran that system that he was completely unfamiliar with. He had the worst results of his career, but they had a championship that came out of it as well. They won because it coincided with their defense. That was the first time Peyton Manning seemingly played under an offensive coordinator, not,
second time. I mean, he did it right away at Denver, and then they were like, no, that's not going to work. I'm changing your offense.
For 2 weeks.
Yeah. No. This was like that ran for a bit, and they were like, you know what, I'm junking your offense.
That was because he couldn't make half the throws. But
that was part of it.
Seattle, the story in Seattle right now, the run defense completely turned a corner. There's historic precedent here with Mike McDonald changing his linebackers right around midseason, changing the defense. Has he found what he wants? Everybody's raving about Ernest Jones, who they traded for from Tennessee. Tyrese Knight, the rookie that they put in there, was a completely different defense last week against Arizona. The Jets already ineffective running the ball, so a chance to make Aaron Rodgers and the Jets one-dimensional here.
Yeah, there is. So it'll be interesting to see if Breece Hall is struggling and can't go. What happens if we get just a full game of Braylon Allen? That would be an interesting dynamic there.
He feels like a guy that might need some time to get like a 15 to 20 carry game and then build up.
I think there's something to the idea of, again, all these running back cliches that the nerds have told people are stupid for the last decade. I think a lot of them there's some version of truth somewhere in there, right? Like Derrick Henry at 250 pounds. I mean, I played at an amateur level on defense for a while. There were large people that were in and around 250 pounds that I did not enjoy tackling, right? Yeah. And I enjoyed tackling them even less in the fourth quarter than I enjoyed tackling them in the first quarter. That same thing is true for NFL players. I don't care if you're 200 pounds instead of 180. You're still outweighed by 45 pounds going up against Derrick Henry. And if at the end of a game, after you've already had your ass kicked and you've already taken a lot of hits and you're tired and you're hurt, Derrick Henry barreling down the pike at you is not a fun thing, right? So the fact that Derrick Henry has been like uniquely able to buck those trends of late in the fourth quarter, Derrick Henry is actually better than other people, is probably a large product of the fact that he's a 250-pound running back, and at some point that weighing on you has an impact. Braylon Allen is not Derrick Henry. He's not even as big as Derrick Henry. He is, however, significantly larger than the average running back. And if he's willing to lean on you and use that power game, 25 carries deep, that probably hits different than it does 2 carries deep. Is all I'm saying.
Body blow beneficiary, potentially.
Yeah. I just think in this world, if there's anything to that, right, and Derrick Henry individually suggests there might be, if there's anything to that world of body blows, accumulative damage from a running back inflicting his will, etc., it probably works for a 250-pound guy as opposed to a guy that weighs 203. And Braylon Allen is a lot closer to a 250-pound guy than he is at 203.
Last thing, I don't know what the injury report looks like, but outstanding just one-on-one matchups. Devin Witherspoon against Gary Wilson, Devontae Adams. Other side, DK Metcalf, Sauce Gardner. Just some really good.
DK against Sauce is a classic, like, physical, grabby, let him play type of play. Yeah. I hope we don't get an officiating crew that's just like flag, let him go.
Just saying, gonna have some fun matchups in this one. All right, Seahawks by 1.5 on the road here in New York, 1 o'clock.
I am taking a lot of road teams. I'm taking Seattle.
Give me the Jets. Just feeling they're cleaning house and feeling good.
The bye week. They'll have fixed it.
They're well rested.
Rodgers just needed a couple of weeks to identify the problem, zero in on the issue, and fix it.
Harry's gonna take the Seahawks.
Okay.
Tennessee Titans at the Washington Commanders. Commanders by 5.5 here. They're 7-5. Titans coming off their win. They're 3-8. When I made my statement the other day about Bryce Young being the best year 2 quarterback over the last 4 weeks, I had many, many Titans fans,
Shocking.
Most of whom have Titans in their Twitter handle. Just saying. So unbiased Titans fans remind me, you're wrong. It's Will Levis. Have you ever watched any football? Like, yes, Will Levis has played well the last few weeks. Taken 20 sacks over the last 3 weeks, but Will Levis playing well, getting the ball down the field extremely well.
They don't get nearly the same press as, Steelers fans or Bears fans or other rabid fan bases, but the Titans have got a quiet lunatic streak to them, to the fan base.
That's good.
When you really rile them up.
When you're not good for a few years, you don't see it as much. Then you win a game. We're 3-8.
Right.
Will Levis.
But like when you really rile them up with something, they'll come after you.
No, I love all fans. They're all fun. We appreciate all the interactions.
You love all fans, huh?
I don't
think that's true. I think that's a lie.
It's a new show. We're trying to pull people in here, Sam. We're not trying to turn people away.
I'm not turning them away. I'm just saying there's a lunatic streak of that fan base.
Oh, there's something to it.
Yeah.
Tighten up. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Will Levis is getting the ball down the field extremely well over these last couple weeks, and it's been an interesting dynamic watching him play the game. Maybe take a few more negative plays, but not pick 6 negatives.
Yeah.
Other than the pick 6.
The pick 6, yeah.
But it's not like
there's been very few pick 6s.
But that was like I just misread it pick 6. That wasn't I was falling down, flipped it over my head pick 6, which is progress.
I mean, he said himself, he hasn't thrown the ball backwards or upside down or whatever it was he said, and that's progress. And it is. I mean, okay, the Green Bay game, he had a complete and total meltdown in terms of turnover-worthy plays. Outside of that, he has 1 turnover-worthy play in every single game this season, which is, number 1, remarkable consistency. But number 2, it shows that the problem was really just how highlight worthy, low light worthy.
Trying to do too much.
It was the memes, right? It's like, in reality, the problem actually wasn't the meme plays. I mean, it's a problem. I'm not saying that like going full Will Levis the way he was earlier in the season is not a problem. Obviously, when you're throwing the ball to a cornerback who's going to march in for a touchdown, that's not good. And that's definitely problematic in terms of trying to win a football game. You know, you can't give the opposition 7 points every game and expect you to still win the game. That is an issue, but I'm saying it wasn't the problem. The problem was the fact that in 4 of his first 5 games, there were 0 big-time throws at all. Nothing good, right? No, like, big plays to offset the meme that was coming along every game. In the last 3 games, he's got 7 big-time throws. He suddenly unlocked this big play potential to go along with, okay, there'll be a bad play in here, but I'm going to try and overcome that with a lot of good plays. So I think really this jump forward in Will Levis's performance, which I think is real, has been on the end of the good play, not the bad play.
Yeah.
The bad plays have been less memeable, but there's still one of them a game, and that's bad.
Stat I pointed out on Monday, he's got over 100 more yards than anyone else on 30-plus yard throws. Now, there was a 98-yarder to Nick Westbrook-Akina, but, I mean, there was another bomb to Westbrook-Akina the other day. They've created some big plays. He throws some absolute dimes to Calvin Ridley down the field the last few weeks. That's been good to see. I don't know if we're in rethink the QB need territory, but
I don't think so, but still.
But look, you've got 5-6 more weeks here to potentially have that. If
Levis was
6 more weeks to prove yourself that, hey, do I deserve another year? Teams are always in a difficult spot with those decisions, but if he balls out and continues this streak, I know there's the sacks in there, some negative plays, but I feel like that's been, hey, it's better than throwing the ball to the defense. If they continue with that, then Titans have something to think about.
It probably shouldn't work this way, but I think if Will Levis was the former number 1 overall pick, he would definitely be making that decision difficult now. I think because he's only a former second-round pick.
Part of it's new coaching staff.
They've already moved on mentally. Like they're already like, there's basically nothing Will Levis can do from this point on to convince us that he is the guy.
The Washington story, also fascinating. They started 7-2. They're 7-5. There's a Hail Mary win in there, right? So you're 1 play away from being 6-6. They looked like they were completely rebuilding, but may have found something in Jaden Daniels. And so I think we went from low expectations to, oh, wait, this looks like one of the best teams in the league, to mediocre expectations right now. It's going to be interesting to see how Washington finishes the season, because no matter how it finishes, I mean, unless they lose out, most of the time you're going to look at this season and say, successful season, trending in the right direction, supposed to be a rebuilding year, and they accelerated things unless there's an absolute massive second half collapse here.
They're a strange team right now to sort of get a handle on, because I think last week was the first week since Jaden Daniels got that rib injury where he looked much better and looked more like Jaden Daniels. But the results didn't necessarily show it. Number one, because he had a couple of interceptions, one of which was a freaky play or bounced off the hand of his running back. And then the end of that game was just absolute batshit crazy, and they lost. So you're like, well, was that actually a bounce back to form and Washington, going back to being Washington, where they looked really good and a playoff team and a team that could win the division? Or was it the same? Are they still in this weird funk because they lost the game and like Cooper Rush beat them? Like, what do you do with Washington coming off that game?
We will get there when Tommy DeVito has not flown to Dallas.
Okay.
Just saying, this is big news.
Big news.
We'll get there when we get there. We got to go faster through some of these games, so let's start now. I really want to see Washington second half. Titans number 4 EPA per play allowed against the run. Austin Eckler, concussion last week.
On that kick return, right?
Yeah, right at the end. So Washington wants to run the ball. Feels like this could be one of those one-dimensional games. I'm still very impressed with Jaden Daniels, even though his Rookie of the Year star is fading because Bo Nix is trending in the right direction. I still think totality of the season, Jaden Daniels has been the best rookie quarterback at least. Fascinated to see how he plays in this game, where I think there's a lot more pressure on him with potentially a run game that's less effective against Tennessee's front.
Right. Run game that might not be as effective. That offensive line for Washington, it's been dramatically better than people thought it would be coming into the year. It is, however, still not great on paper. And now you're going up against a defensive front in Tennessee that can definitely cause problems. Generally, that Tennessee defense overall is good. So it's a stern challenge for this Washington offense. And then obviously, like Washington's defense, we were just giving them credit for like not just turning it around, but being good. And then they gave up a ton against Dallas. They gave up a bunch of big plays. So can they stop this Will Levis resurgence and the big play that's coming? Or will this just be another game that's wild and makes no sense and huge plays going left and right?
All right, man, make a pick.
Washington. To win and cover.
I'm going Tennessee. It's going to keep it close. They've been playing tough these last few weeks. I'll take the Titans to keep it within 5.5. Harry's going to take Washington. All right, let's get to prize picks. We both have to unveil our lineups this week.
Find my lineup
today
first.
On Wednesday. Yep, we both
scroll
have
past a bunch of boy band pictures.
Yep, scroll up, find your lineup. So we're both going to unveil our lineup for prize picks here this week. You guys can join in as well. You get $50 with the promo code Check the Mic after you play your first $5. So here we go. My lineup, we're going to start with Kyler Murray going more than 219 and a half passing yards. Where's it, 0.5? Which one do we use?
Half.
It's against Minnesota. And I said last week I took Caleb Williams' passing projection last week against Minnesota. It didn't matter because some of the other ones didn't hit. But I think because
paid off.
Yeah, because of Minnesota's ability against the run, they do give up more passing yards generally. So that's why I like this play here. So Kyler Murray, more than 219.
Okay.
Sam Laporta. So I got a couple Thanksgiving ones here. Sam Laporta, more than 38 and a half receiving yards. That'll be the first game tomorrow. Yes, the Bears just gave up 114 to Hawkinson in Week 12. Laporta was good for me a couple weeks ago when I took his receiving yard projection. I'm going squeaky wheel Malik Neighbors. So a couple things here. Tommy DeVito is getting his forearm all checked. I mean, they are jumping through hurdles for some reason to get Tommy DeVito to play on Thursday when they just like let Drew Lock play. And if Drew Lock plays, he's going to get the ball to Malik Neighbors. They're going to be working hard to get the ball to Malik Neighbors. And they've shown that they can do it in the past, the Giants. So more than 56 and a half receiving yards for Malik Neighbors. I love that. And then we got the Turkey Day special here.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill, more than a half receiving yard.
That feels achievable.
Tomorrow. I'm sorry, this weekend. No, it is tomorrow.
Tomorrow night. Yeah, last game.
Even though it's in Green Bay, I think he can do it. So that is available all across Prize Picks right now. The Tyreek Hill free square, right? More than the half receiving yard. So that's my lineup. Kyler Murray's passing yards, Sam Laporta receiving yards, Malik Neighbors receiving yards, and Tyreek Hill more than a half receiving yard.
Yeah, okay. I like that. I think that all has a good shot. I did think at one point about going all Turkey Day for this. Like just having everything on the Turkey Day. Either making or breaking your Thanksgiving with the Prize Picks lineup. I ended up not going with that. But I think Jahmyr Gibbs will have more than 19 and a half receiving yards. I think his weapon, the level of weaponry he is out of the backfield is pretty potent. I feel like he can have at least one catch, break off a big play. Then I'm buying into this Will Levis improvement, Titans fans. I'm with you. Will Levis will have more than 203 and a half passing yards against the Washington defense. I think that's book it. And then Tyrone Tracy, my guy. Look, he even looks a little drunk from his profile picture there.
Jeez, man.
What do you want from me? Look, the man's that's the squint of a drunk man. Tyrone Tracy is going to get in the end zone. He's going to have more than half a rushing and receiving touchdown. And then I, too, will steal the Turkey Day special and get Tyreek Hill with an extra bonus going for at least a yard.
We should have just done one just for Thanksgiving and then one for Sunday's games.
Yeah. To be clear, my Tyrone Tracy drunkenness comment, I described him as running like a drunk guy as a prospect.
Yes.
It's nothing to do with any...
not a lush with off-field issues.
Yeah, I have no idea whether the man enjoys a tipple or not, but he certainly runs like a drunkard, and that's a good thing.
So those are our Prize Picks lineups. You guys can play along as you have, and some of you have at least following our lineups. Check the Mic is the promo code over at Prize Picks right now. You get $50 instantly when you play $5.
Never entirely sure what's going to get us canceled on this show, You got to put the caveats out
all
there.
sorts of stuff in this show. Like this episode itself, like this is.
Here's 4 or 5 things just from this show that could get us run out.
Oh, yeah. We've had a good run here. So we've got 6 games left, plus the Turkey Bowl. So we got this. We'll be done by 1. Rams at the Saints. We're going to go faster here. So your team might not get as much love the last 6 games.
Yeah.
Rams Saints, Sunday, 4:05. The Rams favored by 3 against the 4-7 Saints. Rams 5-6 coming off of their Sunday night beatdown against the Eagles.
Yeah. And so
rematch of the 2018 NFC Championship with the pass interference.
Where no untoward officiating calls happen whatsoever.
Yeah.
I feel like the Rams are they're at a low ebb right now because the Eagles just stomped them in the second half. But they really hung tough in that game for a period, and their offense was looking pretty good. Their defense made some plays early. The Saints don't have the ability to do to the Rams what the Eagles did, right? So the second half dynamic there against Philadelphia, I don't think is on the table in this game, at which point you're immediately talking about a game where the Rams offense with their superstar players should still have some joy, and their defense won't get ground down the way the Eagles were able to do to them.
The only problem with this season is you've got a 4-7 Bengals team, a 4-7 Saints team. Like some of these 4-win teams are really capable. You have a 5-win Niners team that in any given week is really capable of doing some damage. The Saints team, before their bye, 2 straight wins. Derek Carr overall has played excellent football this year. He's like throw for throw, one of the best seasons of his career. Now he has Marquez Valdez-Scantling as a deep threat. I mean, the Saints team that hit that they had that 7-game losing streak in the middle of the year and hit this lull, which coincided very often with the Taysom Hill injury. Saints are kind of dangerous again. They had awful injury concerns in the middle of that run. Defense regressed mightily. So I think we got a chance for a very good game here. Every Rams game is massive in the NFC West right now. But I think the Saints are dangerous. MVS and Taysom Hill and Derek Carr on the same offense. How do you stop that?
No, it's true. I mean, the Rams, so that's the thing. I don't think their defense will get ground down the way they did against Philadelphia, but their defense is in the they're in the Cleveland, Jacksonville, Washington axis of like defenses that can give up a massive explosive play at any time. And that's where the Saints are at their most dangerous. Like those chunk plays from Derek Carr to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, previously Rashid Shaheed, they're really capable of those. They want to hit those pass plays. And the Rams are in that world of like the Cleveland defense where they give up a ton of those big plays. So that's the way that the Saints can win and or keep this game close if they don't hit those plays. And the downside of that as a strategy or that as a way of winning is they're inherently low percentage plays anyway, right? So independent of how good the defense is you're going up against, it's just not a high percentage play. But if they hit a bunch of them, the Saints could easily win this game. If they miss on them, I think the Rams are just better.
I think we're in a sneaky it's a 48.5 over-under. Friends over at FanDuel. I think we're in a sneaky good game this week. Potential shootout. I think Stafford, Carr going head-to-head. The Taysom Hill factor when he's out there. And I think Stafford, and he'll be able to get the ball down the field against the Saints defense. I think we're going to have a good game. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the Rams covering the 3, though. So let's make some picks.
I will go with the Rams to cover the 3.
All right, you get the Rams. I'm going to take the Saints, man. Taking another home underdog here. That's my run. Harry's going to take the Rams.
Taking a lot of road teams. I don't like that.
Colts at the Patriots. Classic matchup. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. It's going to be great. No, it's Anthony Richardson and Drake May. The Colts favored by 2.5 here. Anthony Richardson's 3rd road game. I'm just going to count all of them. I mean, a 3rd outdoor game of his career.
Ever.
Over under 42.5 by FanDuel. Patriots 3-9. They have yet to have their bye. One of the few teams to not have a bye yet. As Colts too, actually. They're both headed to their bye. They're 5-7.
Heading into it after this game.
Yes. The last week of byes after Thanksgiving here.
Of course it is.
Then it's full workload for us for the rest of the year.
Bye week schedule these days, just craziness. Absolute nuts. Makes no sense to anybody. I think this is a sneaky good game. Like Drake May last week still played pretty well, and they were just completely overmatched. Like that was an example of when you just run out of talent as a team, and they were just over in over their heads. I don't think this is quite the same game. Like, I don't think the Colts are as good talent-wise as Miami. So I think you might actually get a much closer game where Drake May might be the better quarterback of the two. Probably is the better quarterback of the two based off current evidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make that argument right now. The Pats' offensive line still having issues. They just released Michael Jordan. They're still trying to figure out the combination there. Chop Robinson had the 10 pressures last week. Another rookie coming into town with Laiatu Latu, who had a 90-plus PFF pass rush grade last week. I think Latu and DeForest Buckner, some more Kwity Paye, that Indy defensive line, probably going to have some success. I think it comes down to how May handles the pressure. Similar to C.J. Stroud last year, where you started to see some tendencies pop up on film that could be concerning. I started to see May drifting a little bit more, maybe feeling the pressure a little bit more last week. This goes back to like our initial discussion, Sam. Do you play a rookie quarterback in an awful situation? And I think to this point, Drake May, you'd say it's been successful, right?
Yeah.
He's elevated the offense, and he's created stuff that wasn't a part of this offense previously. All is good. Get him some talent around him. Over these last 6 weeks, though, 5 weeks, 5 games, don't want any of those bad tendencies to pop up. Started to see a little bit of that in Miami, where he was getting crushed and maybe letting it get to him a bit.
That was always the concern, right? It's not would Drake May be good or not in this dynamic or with this lack of talent around him. Like he was my number 2 quarterback in the draft. Right? He was a lot of people's number 2. He was Nate Tice's number 1 QB in the draft. The concern was never, is Drake May good? The concern was, if you play him with this lack of talent around him for this length of time, will it end up being damaging? Will it cause bad habits to emerge? Will it be worse for him than sitting on the sideline and learning without the risk of ruining his game, right? So far, I think the answer to that has been no. But as you're saying, certainly last week, we started to see some signs of those bad habits popping up, right? And that is the concern. It's like, have we just started to deviate from the path, and is this a rut we're going to get into, or was that just a bad game where he's just completely overmatched against a good opponent? I think this game will be an interesting test because Indianapolis's defense is middle of the pack solid. Like, it's pretty good everywhere. So it shouldn't completely overwhelm him and he's got no shot, but it's a good enough test that, like, if he is developing bad habits, it's a team that will force him into more of them.
On the other side, lost in the mix, we've had Richardson coming off his best game 2 weeks ago against the Jets. Last week, throw for throw, still pretty good from Anthony Richardson. We talked about his best throws fell incomplete due to receivers, and they only scored 6 points against what's turned it into a really tough Lions defense. So we talked a lot about Richardson. This is why it's a sneaky good game. May and Richardson are both, I'd say Richardson's playing better over these last couple of weeks. They're both playing pretty well. I think it will be a good game. Want to see Richardson. This will be the first time. Let me check this. If Richardson finishes this game, I believe this will be the first time he's played 3 straight games and started and finished them in his 2-year career. We're over a year and a half into his career. This will be the first time he started and finished 3 straight games. Somebody check me on that.
How many times did he do that in college?
Maybe once or twice, to be honest, between injuries and just didn't start a ton of games. So maybe he could start to finally get into a groove here.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Colts by 2.5 here, Sunday, 1 o'clock.
And I'm going with the Colts. Man, I'm taking a lot of road teams.
I'm taking more home dogs. I'm taking the Patriots. Colts are coming off the Lions game. Get the Lions factor, if that means anything. Harry's going to take the Colts here to cover the 2.5. All right, so now I didn't realize that we did put them in order. So now we got the Black Friday and the Thanksgiving games.
Okay.
Black Friday game, Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Friday at 3. It's year 2 of the Black Friday tradition. Amazon Prime hosting the game. They're doing a lot. It was like an hour and a half game, hour and a half pregame. They're doing a lot to hype up the Black Friday game between the Raiders and the Chiefs, where the Chiefs are favored by 12.5.
Yeah.
With Gardner Minshew out for the season now for the Raiders.
Yeah, that's the thing. I hated this line. I'm like, 12.5 against the Raiders, who have done a reasonable job against Kansas City a lot of the times. On the other hand, it's Desmond Ridder.
Now, the last time the Raiders went into Kansas City, Raiders won. Kansas City went on to win their next many, many games after that, including the Super Bowl. But the Raiders won on Christmas. That was the game where Aiden O'Connell, they're trying to get Aiden O'Connell, I think, back for this game potentially. But Aiden O'Connell didn't complete a pass in the second half, and they still won. It was one of the worst. It was the lowest graded game of Patrick Mahomes' career by PFF. There was a pick 6 by Jack Jones. There was a fumble 6 on back-to-back plays. It was awful offensive performance from the Chiefs. That was on Christmas. And last time around, they played earlier this year. I said, hey, it's the revenge game, right? Because they talked about they did the Kermit the Frog thing. The Raiders were talking a big game. But I really think the Christmas game last year was like the game, I think, that solidified Antonio Pierce as getting the job.
Yeah.
I think
agree.
that was the game.
Yeah, sure.
And I think this is where the Chiefs finally unleash all their revenge against a woeful Raiders
Finally
defense.
unleash the revenge.
Yeah.
Tom Pelissero is reporting that it will be Aiden O'Connell to start instead of Desmond Ridder.
Okay. So I think that gives the Raiders a shot.
A shot of covering 14. Yeah.
No, I mean, they had
you
a
think
shot.
that give them the shot to win the game?
In the first game, again, anytime you've got the Chiefs and the Lions, with a big line, I like to look at it through the underdog lens of can you pull this off? In the first matchup, remember Mahomes threw a pick from the end zone, and the Raiders got the ball at the 3, and then they just ran the ball. They have the worst rushing attack from an efficiency standpoint this millennium, and they just ran the ball 3 straight times at Chris Jones, and it didn't work.
No,
right? They didn't take advantage. So the Raiders' shot here is Aiden O'Connell makes a few big-time throws. He did that against Kansas City last year in a matchup. You get a few big-time throws. You get the Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers dudes going. You forget about the run game. Chuck it around. Kansas City has been weaker from a pass coverage standpoint with some of the injuries on the back end. So that's your one shot, I think, if you're the Raiders. And they were close last time. They just couldn't capitalize on some of the mistakes that Kansas City made in the game in Vegas.
I mean, I do think, yes, I think Aiden O'Connell gives them a much better chance than Desmond Ridder. I don't think it really gives them a chance to win other than the world of, any given Sunday, freaky things can happen in any given game. I mean, Kansas City is still much better. Yes, the Raiders have done a pretty solid job generally of slowing down Kansas City's offense. I don't know how they score enough points. Kansas City's defense, so this is kind of one element. Kansas City's record has hidden quite a lot of just general discussion points from the Chiefs this year. The offense has probably been better than its narrative, but the defense has been generally worse. They were amazing last year. It's not been at that level this season. I mean, look just to last week for evidence of this. Carolina's offense.
Kansas City's defense has been, I think, unbelievable until 2 weeks ago.
I think overall
it's been the last 2 weeks. It's been since Nazee Johnson has been, the starter.
You think that's it?
Yeah.
On its own?
Yeah, they lost. It was Jalen Watson who went down. I get all those guys confused. The injuries at corner have made them a little bit more susceptible. I think the Buffalo game and the Carolina game. But until then, they were winning with all defense.
I mean, the defense has still been the better side of the ball.
Joshua Williams injury.
Yeah, the defense has still absolutely been the better side of the ball, but I don't think the defense has been as good as last year, where it was the best defense in the NFL. This was the story of last year was this offense that had been really average at best. Okay, it took a step forward in the postseason. They kind of pulled themselves together, but it was this is the worst offense Mahomes has ever led, but it's been paired with the best defense by a mile that he's ever had on the other side of the ball. And it ended up being arguably the best defense in the NFL, certainly up there with them. This year, it's still a good defense, but I don't think it's in that category.
I mean, I think it was up until basically 2 weeks ago. That's it. Anyway, it's still a really good all-around team. I'm with you on Kansas City's offense. I think is still underwhelmed overall this year. I think they've actually played down to their competition. They haven't dominated where they should have. They were on their way to last week against Carolina, and then kind of slowed down a little bit. But I think this is the type of game where they hit the big play to Xavier Worthy. They get DeAndre Hopkins going. I just think they're going to move the ball too easily against this Raiders team.
According to PFF, excluding the last 2 weeks, the Chiefs' offense is Chiefs' defense rather was 15th in EPA per play against, was 13th in touchdown percent drive allowed rate. That's a clumsy way. You know what I'm saying? And then
excluding the last 2 weeks?
Excluding. And then 18th in successful play allowed percentage.
Okay.
So the data would say...
Wow. Getting canceled for that, too. The third
No, you need 2 of them to be canceled, like Eli.
Ah, okay.
Double bird is canceled. Single bird is fine.
All I know is this season they keep making the stops at the right time. Anyway, make a pick. We'll talk about the Chiefs later. 12.5.
Aiden O'Connell changed everything for me. I was going with Kansas City with a giant line, and I hated it. But Aiden O'Connell has given me just enough reason to say that the Raiders will lose but have a moral victory and cover.
Yeah, not for me. Kansas City wins by a lot. Harry's going to take Kansas City as well to cover the 12.5. All right, let's go Turkey Day. Miami Dolphins at the Green Bay Packers. It's the night game. Packers favored by 3.5, and it's Tua in the cold, and it's the only thing that matters.
Tua in the cold.
Can we get a recent? We need a Green Bay weather report, please.
I'm looking at one right now. There is potential snow in the air.
Of course.
31 degrees.
When isn't there potential snow in the air?
That's the high with a low of 22. And again, I don't know at what point in the day that starts to happen, but there's snow forecast potentially, possibly.
Beautiful. So this is big.
The narrative bowl.
Yeah.
Can Miami do it on the road against a good team in the cold/snow? That's it. Those 3 things.
Those things. I mean, we have gone full circle into what they were last year, right? Miami wins week 1 against Jacksonville. Looked like a pretty good, impressive win at the time. Tua gets hurt by week 2. Things fall apart when he's out with his concussion. Comes back. Offense looks completely different. They're averaging about 30 points a game since he's been back, or almost 30 points a game since he's been back. Looks just like last year, and including the same questions,
right?
Which are, can this offense be good? Can it travel well? Can it play outdoors well? Can it play in the cold well? Can it do it against good teams? All of those questions are right back from Miami. Because last week they were cooking. I mean, the last couple of weeks they've been doing. Other than, as I mentioned Monday, it's not Tyreek Hill as dominant as last year. It's getting Jonnu Smith involved. It's just getting more people involved, which is great. It looks good, and man, is Tua good. Kyle Krabs, our friend over here at 33rd Team, draft analyst at the 33rd Team, also runs his Dolphins site and does a lot of Dolphins coverage. Posted 4. Do you see the 4 screenshots that he posted?
Nope. It
was 4 throws from Tua, and each throw is like less than a football away from a guy's hand on the Patriots. And it was unbelievable. They were all completions. And it was just his ability to anticipate, be pinpoint, throw the ball to a spot. I mean, he is special at that. Tua is special at that within this Miami offense. But we've also seen him not be as special in games against the Bills defense, against the Ravens defense, against the Chiefs defense, and in, some of these. Look, he put up a lot of points against the Bills in a cold weather game a couple of years ago. That it's not like impossible, but it's one of those questions. And if Miami's going to make this run for the 7 seed at 5 and 6, this is the type of upset they're going to have to pull.
Yeah, it's funny. Like Tua coming back immediately, like switch flipped, totally different team. But the 2 losses that they had, even with that, were really close losses to Arizona and Buffalo, who were the best 2 teams they've played since he's come back. And then they get 3 wins who are against the 3 not as good teams, albeit, the Rams, good team. But so you're still left with this sort of dynamic, whether by just chance or that's actually real, that they still lose against the good teams and win against the bad teams or the not as good teams. So it still is a real question of, him coming back, it's a totally different team. They're viable again, but they might just be back to where they were a year ago, which is we still don't know if they can beat good teams in non-ideal circumstances. So, and because they've lost so many games with him not being there, they're in a tough spot. Like they need one of these games somewhere because they've got a few good teams coming down the stretch.
Still play the Jets twice. They have the Niners, Texans, Browns. Not necessarily in that order, but
right.
Yes, huge game for Miami here, and then Green Bay. If you're just trying to keep pace in the loaded NFC North, they're in 3rd at 8-3. Packers looking, really good, and I think what I like about the Packers is the different ways they can win every single week now. Right? We saw Josh Jacobs Pounding the rock last week, didn't need to get much out of their pass game. We've talked a lot about we don't know which playmaker is going to be the guy in any given week. They can mix it up. It can be Christian Watson down the field. It can be Christian Watson dropping perfect passes. It can be Tucker Kraft just making huge plays looking like Gronk. It can be different every week from the Green Bay Packers. And I think that the Dolphins offense against the Packers defense, also fascinating matchup as well.
No, agreed, yeah. That's also an interesting side of the ball. I mean, the Packers offense just has so many different ways to win in any given week. Like I don't think any of those guys are consistently amazing, right? But each one of them it can be that guy this week, including Jordan Love, who's not been consistently amazing the way he was down the stretch last year, but is capable of having any given game where he looks fantastic.
And this was right around the time. Every week I'll remember, like right around the time where Love went on his stretch last year where he seemed to turn around. Started about mid-November, but Thanksgiving game, they played on Thanksgiving last year, upset the Lions in a really impressive effort, and that was when we started to need to take the Packers seriously. I think they beat the Chiefs and Lions in back-to-back weeks or within a couple of weeks of each other. So Green Bay trending in the right direction once again this year. They're favored by 3.5 here. The nightcap of the Thanksgiving triple header.
I'm buying into all the narratives. I don't think Miami are able to do it against a good team on the road in the snow.
Same. Which reminds me, Georgia Tech this week. How would you describe Georgia versus Georgia Tech rivalry week?
Clean old-fashioned hate between the hedges and the peach state?
That's correct. Well done. I wonder if there's anybody watching right now that watched that video on YouTube on the first year of our YouTube channel.
Not a single human being has any idea what we're doing
when you and I were breaking down
joke.
The Georgia Tech 2018 game.
Yeah.
You did a great job hosting. 2 more Thanksgiving games to discuss before we get to North Reading. Bears Lions, they're going to kick it off at 12:30 Eastern, 10.5 is the line for the Lions. They're 10-1, Bears 4-7.
Yeah. Man, tough. I mean, the Lions, they look like the best team in the NFL at the moment. They're dominant on offense. Their defense is really good. They found that massive improvement in the pass rush with Zadarius Smith coming in to offset what they lost with Aiden Hutchinson. And then that's going up against the Bears, who have sort of ticked in the right direction, definitely turned things around since making a change at offense coordinator, and yet have yet to be rewarded for it because they faced teams 2 and 3 in the NFC North who have both snuck out wins against them.
Yeah, let me try to take the same tact as we did in the Chiefs game. How can the Bears pull this off? And this isn't being anti-Lions here. I know Lions fans are paying the bills here, Sam. They're paying the bills this year. They're watching more.
They're propping up the NFL.
They're watching more of our videos than anyone else.
This whole enterprise would just fall over.
We love I love. There's no better team that I love more than the Lions. The way they're built, the way they play, everything. But again, from like this underdog perspective, how can the Bears pull off this upset against the Lions? You hinted at it a little bit on Monday. If Lions aggressive 4th down decisions, if you can make a stop, right? If you can make a key stop here and there. Honestly, the Colts making one of those stops the other day kept them within 18.
Yeah,
basically.
it gave them life for a bit.
It did give them a little bit of life. The Bears are going to have to make a couple of those stops. And then Caleb Williams, the way he's playing, 5 big-time throws on Sunday in special, tight window, outside of structure, combination of all those. Caleb Williams making some special plays like Jordan Love did on Thanksgiving last year against the Lions. Like, that would be the Bears' only shot here. Yeah,
I mean, I think Chicago's offense has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Detroit's defense and actually have parity on that side of the ball. Like, I think Caleb Williams, particularly if he's able to back up the performance he had last week, like, they are able to make plays against that Lions defense, which is good, not great, I would say. They are, however, a very good bend but do not break defense. These are actually both these two teams. They have Detroit is number 1 and Chicago is number 6 in terms of touchdown drives rate allowed. Why can't I say that as a sensible sequence of words? Neither one of these defenses gives up touchdowns at a high rate, is what I'm saying. So they're both very good kind of bend but don't break type of defenses. But I do think that Caleb Williams is able to make enough big plays for that side of the ball to have parity. The question becomes, how do you stop this Lions offense, which has just been like unstoppable, like utterly ridiculous. Like the passing game is amazing. They got weapons everywhere. They got speed everywhere. You know, Jared Goff gets into these zones where he doesn't make an incompletion. It's like, I don't know. And they're one of the 3 teams that have the ability to do that. Let's lean on them until they break. And in the fourth quarter, we'll just establish our will and run the ball down their throat. So that part is insane. And that's where I think you go back to the only way at the moment on current evidence. There are 2 ways, potentially. Number 1, Jared Goff throws 5 interceptions and you simply get a bunch of turnovers, break your way, and you steal a whole bunch of drives that you shouldn't have. The other way is the Lions will give you opportunities to get beat, but show up in a few high leverage plays and swing things back in your direction. Like the way they play the game with that fourth down aggressiveness, with those types of things, every single game they are going to give the opposition an opportunity where if they execute really well in a small handful of high leverage plays, they can disproportionately swing the game back in their favor. So even if they get wrecked, as long as they're not giving up the touchdown, if they're able to get them to fourth down, you can steal a drive here or there.
Yeah, the one other point I would add is maybe Detroit's pass protection it's been like upper middle of the pack this year. They have a great offensive line, but they're a little better in the run game than they are pass protection. If you get the strip sack, to me it comes down to, does Goff take care of the ball? I just think the Lions have, first off, I'm always concerned about the Bears' run defense since losing Andrew Billings. That's the Lions' strength. I think they'll get that 1-2 punch. David Montgomery's got a shoulder. It sounds like he's probably going to play. Even if he doesn't, you give a few more carries to Jahmyr Gibbs. Always a big play waiting to happen, and so tough to stop. Jameson Williams, I got Sam Laporta's receiving projection. He's going to get his for me, so that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. They have the great Tim Patrick. It's too much to stop for Detroit. I can't wait to see Caleb Williams' development. We're in this stage where we like to talk about player development a lot, and you have Anthony Richardson and Drake May and Will Levis, and these guys haven't won a ton of games over the last few weeks, but they're all playing better, and you could put Caleb Williams into that bucket as well. And now his season is essentially struggled, played well, struggled, played well again. It happens to coincide with the offensive coordinator change. Can he put together some level of consistency here? Because it's just been ebbs and flows of good and bad in Caleb Williams' season.
Yeah, because it happened, it coincided with the move at offense coordinator. It's easy to say, well, they got rid of Shane Waldron. Suddenly, Caleb Williams looks better. Everything's going great. It's all trajectories going in the right direction. We did, however, see him take steps forward under Shane Waldron, and then it all collapsed again. So it could simply be the variance of a young quarterback who plays the game in an unusual high volatility type of style. And actually, in any given week, the wheels might fall off again, and Caleb Williams goes back to being non-functional. So it's tough to parse that, given the sample size issues, but it does feel different. The way he's played the last couple of weeks, it's been much more coherent, logically within structure, and understanding when to bail and get out of there and use his athleticism and make plays, like tapping into his natural playmaking ability. So I at least think it's been a real tangible cause and effect thing, but you definitely can't overlook the possibility that it's just been variance.
And last week, hung tough against the Vikings defense.
Yeah.
That's number 1 in EPA per play. The Lions are 3rd, man. And this is playing well since losing Aiden Hutchinson, moving Zadarius Smith around. We mentioned that last week. So there'll be some pressure up front. It's a fun matchup. I think 10.5 is a lot. The Lions have established themselves as a team, though, that they can lean on you and win in all these different ways. And they win these double-digit – they cover these double-digit spreads because they play like a juggernaut. They play like a powerhouse every single week, and they haven't really let up a ton this season.
Yeah, they are a team that can destroy teams, not just beat them. They're the team that's putting up, last time this happened was the 07 Patriots type of team who also did that, right? Not only did the Patriots in 07 beat teams, they stomped them, and they kept stomping them even when it's like, dude, the Simpsons meme, right? He's already dead. Like, stop playing Tom Brady this deep into the game. Why are you scoring another touchdown? Just pack it in. You've already won. The Lions are the type of team that's doing that this year. So as big as the line is, I think they're definitely capable of covering it. I do, however, think that the Bears might cover this one and keep it within 10.5.
All right. Yeah, I'm kind of with you that the Bears keep it close. but I know our audience.
Yeah, you know.
Lions, baby.
Yeah.
We're taking the Lions. Harry's also going to take the Lions to cover the 10.5 here. And then the middle game on Thanksgiving to wrap it all up here. Giants and Cowboys. It's at 4:30. Cowboys favored by 3.5. We talked about the breaking news earlier that Tommy DeVito has not flown to Dallas. And this is significant because that's where the football game is.
Correct.
In Dallas.
So that means he's not playing.
Well, reportedly he just hasn't gone yet. He'll go at some point. They're doing extra tests.
Oh, so they'll fly him later.
On the forearm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like remember when Tyrod, after his punctured lung, they had to bus him across the country or whatever because he couldn't fly with the lung thing.
Stab a guy in the lung and you have to.
Then he's going to get a bus.
Then he's going to take a bus. I mean, double whammy there.
Brutal. So, it's not like that, is what you're saying.
This is dinner time game. This is dinner time.
This is the game where you can eat. You can, take a nap after your meal, after the turkey that apparently is compulsory.
Eat and fall asleep.
Yeah. It's the nice break that they've built into the schedule so that everyone can chill and have a nap. And I think that's good. I think that's a positive development, We're going to be paying attention for Chicago-Detroit. It'll hopefully be a closer game than the line. We'll be, entertained by Caleb Williams and the juggernaut that is the Lions. Everyone's good. Then you cook your food, you eat your meal, you have a nap while this game happens, and then you're back at it for the Miami. Can they win in the cold and the snow?
And I love being all snuggled up watching football players play in 15-degree weather. I love that.
I love weather games that I don't have to play in.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I actually kind of like playing in weather games.
No, playing in weather games is fun. Watching them live is.
There's a lot of other people are like, you're only saying because
I like playing
even football players have said this. There's been a surprising volume of football players have been like, it's not fun to play in. It's like, yeah, it kind of is.
I love playing in the snow.
Maybe you're just soft.
Yeah. Listen, NFL player, you're just soft, not want to play.
I know. Look,
I think we're gonna get Drew Lock versus Cooper Rush. That's my guess here.
Yeah, possibly. I'm saying you play in a mud bowl in a hail-created mud bowl in Tala. You tell me it's not fun.
So I think we'll get Malik Neighbors getting for under 37.5. It's also in Dallas. All the tours are happening today.
Oh, man.
A lot of distractions at home.
Well, this is now we're back on this, right?
What's the sun look like tomorrow?
On the road, Dallas is liberated from the pressure. They don't have to worry about the sun. They don't have to worry about the roof literally falling on them. The people, watching them lift weights, you have to worry whether their ass looks big in those shorts. With the people up against the windows, it's a nightmare. Nobody likes being at home when you're Dallas. On the road, it's all gone. It's just ball. It's just ball this week. We get to play liberated from all the pressure. Well, now we're back under the pressure, under the spotlight, under the searing spotlight of the sun streaming in through the windows to blind them. And it's just brutal. I mean, how do they win that game?
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Unless Cutlets plays again.
It gets easier.
Yeah.
I think Drew
if
Lock.
Tommy didn't give him a boost last week,
It sort of feels like the greatest thing that's ever happened to Drew Lock's career is that he got dumped down. He got overlooked for Cutlets because now we're like, Drew Lock's the solution here.
I just can't believe they're like jumping through hurdles. Like, just give the dude a week off. Cutlets can have a week off on a short week with Drew Lock, the real backup, playing. It's okay.
We really need to schedule a second plane. Can we not just go to Drew Lock?
Get on the plane and hold the clipboard. You'll be okay.
But do they even have a third quarterback? They cut Daniel Jones. Who's the emergency QB?
They have Tim Boyle. Do they have Tim Boyle?
Did they sign it? Oh, they did, didn't they? Yeah, they signed Tim Boyle. Okay, maybe that would make you go through some hoops.
Yeah, to be the backup at least.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like they're in a position where if Drew Lock goes down, Tim Boyle needs to come in, play Thanksgiving football.
First matchup, Cowboys won by 5, but that was, Dak Prescott versus Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
So
totally different ball game.
Completely different teams here. That's it. Let's just make some picks and get out of here. We got to talk North Reading Linfield.
Yeah. Did I really pick Dallas at home in the sun?
I'm taking Drew Lock. I'm taking the Giants. Drew Lock's going to ball out.
Yeah, I'm going to change my pick.
Neighbors
go with
got
the Giants.
15 for 220.
I don't even care that it's potentially Drew Lock. It's more Dallas is at home, but the pressure's going to get to them.
Harry's going to take Dallas here.
Okay.
So is that it? Is that all the games? Did we do it? Janko thought we were going to go to 1:30. Dexter Lawrence. You are obligated to mention Dexter Lawrence when we talk about the Giants.
Obligated?
Just say
he's really good.
Just say that he could wreck the game.
He's really good. he could wreck the game because Dallas's offensive line isn't great.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. As I always mentioned, in Massachusetts and I don't know how many other states, they always play the rivalry high school football game on Thanksgiving morning. My high school's North Reading, and Linfield is our big rival.
Okay.
I've got it on sources. I don't have an actual line, but I got North Reading is plus 300 to win the game right now.
Plus 300.
Yeah, so Linfield is favored. We'll just do win or loss. We'll call it even, so you could pick the winner of this game tomorrow. It's tomorrow morning, 10 a.m.
Yeah,
I believe the game this year would be in North Reading. We used to host it on odd years. COVID threw everything off. It's an even year, so I think it's at whatever the field's called in North Reading now.
So it's North Reading as home dogs. Is that what you're telling me?
Home dogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick Linfield on the road again.
Oh, jeez. I think Linfield won by like 40 last year. It was rough. Maybe it was 2 years, but we won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. That's what the championship.
Oh, I see.
Like Division 6.
Gotcha.
Whatever we did. Give me North Reading.
All right. I'm
Go
already
Hornets.
2 up on the ancillary random ass things we're predicting.
You
I
do.
got the Grey Cup right, and I got
Grey
Jake
Cup.
Paul beating Mike Tyson,
You've picked the Grey Cup, Jake Paul,
and now Linfield.
and Linfield.
Yeah.
I think I was 0-2 on those other picks. No, I got the Grey Cup as well. I'm
Yeah,
1-1.
we agreed on that. The chat also wants to know what we're cooking up
Oh,
for
yeah.
Thanksgiving.
So I'm a guest. I'm not hosting for the first time in a while. So I'm
Okay.
going to a friend's house, and it feels pretty standard. It's going to be your
Standard turkey.
He's got multiple turkeys in the whole thing. Nothing that I would consider special or different. But I'm curious to know what you're.
Just a Thanksgiving by the numbers.
It is
Yeah.
by the numbers Thanksgiving.
By the numbers Thanksgiving.
Previously, we had gotten some barbecue at a place over by your house with a really good smoked cranberry sauce that was outstanding for a couple years, but nothing crazy this year.
All right.
I want everybody in the chat to tell us as well what's on the menu. I'll reread the chat.
Okay.
What do you have going on?
I mean, we talked about this before. There's both a chicken and a duck in my freezer, and I'm currently on the fence as to which one to cook.
Do both.
Do both.
Why not both?
Because there's only 3 of us.
My favorite part of Thanksgiving, though, is the leftovers.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do on Friday, college football starts. Now we get the Black Friday game. Football's going on, and you get the big. I get a cookie sheet. You slap some turkey on it, stuffing, mashed potatoes. You throw everything on the cookie sheet, warm it up. We'll heat up the gravy. Love it. That's
Maybe
my
I'll
favorite. The leftover cookie sheet is my favorite.
Instead of doing both the birds, I do also have a couple of like sirloin roast, beef roasts. in the freezer. I might do one of them, so I have a chicken and beef roast.
So I got a couple of roasts. That's Friday and Saturday for us. That's post Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
when we're hosting people. We got producer Ben is having filet,
good call.
no turkey, and producer Janko's got 7 different pies for 9 people.
7
Apparently,
pies for
a lot
9
of
people.
pies.
I do need to go out and get a dessert right now, but I'm in a tough world where I gotta. That's chewing into a giant chunk of calories that I'm on in my daily restriction at the moment.
Yeah, you
I don't know
don't.
how I'm going to manage that.
You don't want to brave the grocery stores either. On Wednesday,
They've started to shut them now for Thanksgiving.
on a Wednesday though.
No, not on a
You're
Wednesday.
gonna go on
yeah.
Thursday.
No, I mean I got to go at some point before Thanksgiving, but whatever.
All right, is
That's
that
it.
Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We're thankful, grateful for all of our listeners
Yeah,
this year.
thankful for everybody that's come with us to our new home, new venture. Obviously, big year for us. We departed PFF, started anew without our feeds, and here we are, and people came with us.
Yeah, we appreciate all of those who have come with us. Over 22,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Everybody that's followed in podcast land. I'm thankful for your new hair,
Which may or may not survive beyond today.
It's our last Movember show
I would suspect not.
as well. So anyway, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Everybody enjoy the weekend and the holiday, and we'll see you again on Monday morning with more Check the Mic.